Good morning and welcome to the Board of County Commissioners Tuesday, October 24th, 9 a.m. meeting. We begin each one of our meetings with an invocation, and today we have Rabbi Jay Sherwood from Temple Shalom. If you would like to join us, please stand.
Before we begin our invocation, I'd like to, on behalf of the Jewish community, thank the county commissioners for their proclamation, which they handed me a copy of this morning in support of the state of Israel and in support of their fight against terrorism. Avinu Shabashamayim, our God in the heavens, we give thanks to you for another day amongst the beauty of your creation. We ask you to bless all of the residents of El Paso County with another day of peace and happiness and success. We ask for you to give the commissioners of our county, their assistants, and all the employees of our county the wisdom and the discernment to make the decisions and to do the things that are needed to make our lives good lives in this county. Oh God, we know that we live in a world that is a difficult one, a world that currently is filled with chaos and terror. We know that half of the people in the world subscribe to religions that find Jerusalem and Israel as the center of their belief. And we ask for peace in that place. We ask that the more than 200 hostages who still are in Gaza are returned in health and safety and peace to their families as soon as possible. And may the ugliness and the horror of war come to an end as soon as possible in that place and anywhere in the world, because when it ends there, it spreads around the world. We close with these words of traditional Jewish prayer, Oseh Shalom Bimromav, Huya Aseh Shalom, Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru amen. May the one who makes peace in the heavens make peace for us, for Israel, and for every person who dwells on the earth. And let us say, Amen.
Thank you. And Mr. Berman, if you'd like to lead us in the pledge, please.
Pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and we are on to item 3.
Item number 3 is staff emergency items, and I'm unaware of any staff emergency items today.
Item 4.
Item number 4 is changes, postponements, and notice of the next meeting. I'm unaware of any changes or postponements to today's agenda, and the next meeting will be Tuesday, October 31st at 9:00 a.m. at Fountain City Hall.
Thank you. And before we move on to item 5, Commissioner Bremer is going to be a bit late today, so we will need a motion to excuse her.
Move to excuse Commissioner Bremer.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. I'll call the roll. Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Aye.
And the vice chair votes aye. That passes 4-0. On to item 5.
Item number 5 is the consent calendar, including items 5A through 5J5.
Are there any comments on the consent calendar? Or anybody in the public who wishes to speak on the consent calendar? Anybody online? Okay, hearing none, I will wait for motion.
Move approval of items 5A through 5J, 1 through 5.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. I'll call the roll. Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Aye.
And the vice chair votes aye. That passes 4-0. Item 6.
Item number 6 is comments by elected officials and commissioner liaison reports. 6A, Clerk and Recorder 2023 Coordinated Election Update. Steve Schleicher, Clerk and Recorder.
Good morning, Commissioner. Steve Schleicher, El Paso County Clerk and Recorder. And I am here this morning to provide you on our current election. So things are pretty busy in the clerk and recorder's office right now. We are intaking ballots, accepting ballots. We've got ballot runners running. We are training over 70 different judges right now for our VSPCs. So just to provide some reminders, if your ballot has not been received, and I would say today, please contact my office at 719-575-VOTE. We have received a couple phone calls from folks, and we've taken care of it, got them a replacement ballot. But if you have yet to receive your ballot, please contact 719-575-VOTE. As I've mentioned numerous times, voters should research the candidates and measures to be prepared. On the ballot, we have 2 statewide measures and 13 local and municipal measures, and this is all depending on the precinct and/or the school district that you reside here in El Paso County. If you need to register to vote or update your voter record, you could go to govotecolorado.gov. We actually were greeted this morning very early, about 7:15, with folks standing outside our door wanting to register. After October 30th, register or update your registration can be done at a voter service and polling center, a VSPC, and citizens may register to vote through the election day but are encouraged to not wait. I always emphasize return your ballot early. You don't want to be the one where your ballot was not counted because you missed a deadline, but you could return early to one of our 39 secure 24-hour ballot boxes throughout the county. Ballots must be received by 7 p.m. on election day, which is November 7th, and postmarks do not count. And the last day recommended, as I've shared before, is to return your ballot by mail no later than October 30th. So commissioners, here is where we are at. These are numbers as of 9:59 a.m. yesterday. These numbers are changing dramatically each and every hour as we are accepting ballots. But as you can see, we mailed out 473,865 ballots. Thus far, we have accepted 8,178. And in my conversations with many other Metro County clerks, we are doing far better. So Arapahoe and other metro counties at that time, you know, they were just at about 1,000. But again, last week is when people were just getting their ballots and they're doing research. But I am seeing a number of accepted ballots. We had a number of trays delivered yesterday that we are working right now. But as you sit there, here is the breakdown by each entity, where you can go ahead and add those up. It comes to 8,178. So these are ballots that have actually been received from voters living within that district. In addition, what I'll provide to you guys is each day I will provide an update of how many ballots have been accepted. We will start counting the ballots next week. So we are accepting them and we will start counting them per state law next week. So commissioners, that is my weekly update, and I will tell you the numbers will be far, far different come next Tuesday when I see you all down a fountain. Are there any questions, comments?
Questions or comments from the board?
I just wanted to thank you for the picture of me voting.
Commissioner, I actually thought that was pretty funny. So just to share with you all, Commissioner Williams reached out and said, hey, I just voted. Let's see how these new cameras are. And I placed my ballot in the ballot box. If I remember, it was 11:23.
Yes, and I waved at the camera, and you sent me a picture of me waving.
Absolutely. So with the new cameras, I went exactly to that mark, print screened it, and sent it to her and said, wave them back at you. So the new cameras are amazing. So thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you so much for being here and sharing that update. We certainly look forward to hearing more next week.
Absolutely. Commissioners, have a great day.
Okay, and it looks like we have a couple other elected officials here. So any other countywide? DA Allen, did you want to make any comments in this section? Okay. Okay, and so we'll go ahead and bring it up here then, starting with Commissioner Williams.
Okay, it's been pretty quiet week, actually. I had the opportunity yesterday to visit with Forge Evolution. They're originally a group that started as Teen Court, first back in 1992, and I was part of that board that started that, although all of the credit goes to Barbie Schlabs and one other person there. And so they've taken a successful program, Teen Court, and turned it into something bigger and hopefully assisting the youth of our community more as they struggle through high school. I remember those struggles myself. So this week, the schedule is pretty light because it is the 5th week. So I'm going to leave the mayor's civic presentation to my fellow commissioners Vanderwerf and Gonzalez because I'm preparing to present for the Northern El Paso County Homeowners Association in early November. And I do have a few other meetings, but but it's my light week, so I get to mostly stay back at the office. Other than that, I have nothing to report.
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you, Madam Vice Chair. And I also visited Forge Evolution yesterday, right after Commissioner Williams, or about an hour after Commissioner Williams. And so I echo the comments that she made about Forge Evolution. The one other additional comment I think is interesting. Going past the teen court, they're trying to now help families and kids prior to a child getting into the court system, so they never get there to begin with. So it's a really awesome thing to try to do. They've got big, bold plans. They've got a big building. They've got to renovate the building, and they've got a lot of great ideas about what to do in the building, and they have a capital campaign to try to raise money to finish all that out. Also yesterday, I went to UCCS and taught at one of the, or was a guest speaker at one of the politics classes, and the topic was regarding the need to cooperate in local government so that you can have a better community. It was a great meeting with the students there. And now this afternoon, normally I will have the Airport Advisory Commission meeting today at 3 o'clock. Normally that's on Wednesday, but they've changed the date to a Tuesday, very rare thing for them, but that will be this afternoon. And then on Wednesday, I'm planning on going to the Peak Vista Community Health Center breakfast, then the Community Relations meeting. Those are both in the morning. I'll be with Commissioner Gonzalez at the Mayor's Fellowship Program starting at 11 on Wednesday. And then some internal meetings here at the county, and then the Pikes Peak or Bust Foundation celebration honoring our local military, where they'll provide the check to the military for the funds that they raise as a result of the Pikes Peak or Bust operations. And I'm really looking forward to that. Then on Thursday, late afternoon, 5 p.m., the C4C leadership reception. I'm looking forward to that. And then on Friday, we have the jail tour. And I think all the commissioners, or most of us, will be part of that. It's actually a statutory requirement once a year to go. I'm looking forward to that. And that is what I have for this week. Thank you.
Yes, in my redo, because I wasn't prepared, we have the always exciting and quite revealing jail tour on Friday. So thank you.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Vice. Yeah, busy week, actually, busy Wednesday. So a Board of Health meeting tomorrow morning I'll be participating in, as was mentioned, the Mayor's Civic Leaders Fellowship. So I'll be presenting with Commissioner Vanderwerf at that. My Fountain Valley Senior Center meeting after that, and we have the Region 16 Opioid Council meeting as well tomorrow afternoon, and then, as was mentioned as well, the Pikes Peak or Bust Foundation honoring our local military, great event where, again, the organizations receive a check from all the fundraising that the Pikes Peak or Bust Foundation has done for the year. So always a great event. C4C leadership reception, as was mentioned, for Thursday, and then the annual required jail tour, an update, and that's enough, I think. But I've got, for the events, I do have two other things. Again, I put my ballot in the local Dropbox, doing that today. I have it here at the office. So a reminder for everyone to vote. As a reminder, very limited what we can say on it, but this board has taken an official position against Proposition HH. Thank you.
And I have many of the same events that have been mentioned. I do want to say I had a fantastic time at the Giant Pumpkin event in Falcon over the weekend. There is nothing better in my mind than taking the time to be out in our community and talking to people. The ability to stay connected to what people are really concerned about requires us to do that and talk to people who aren't here in this building every day and may not even watch a meeting, may have never watched a single meeting. But their opinions and thoughts about what is happening in the county are very important, and I really enjoyed being out in our community. Really fantastic people there that shared really positive things about that they are seeing the differences in our roads in the unincorporated area that are getting better, and that was really encouraging. And just hearing about their general concerns about how expensive it's getting. All of those things were just really, really good to stay grounded and connected to our community. So I'm really grateful to Smith Farms for the fantastic family fun event. I had a beanbag toss station, and those kids tossed beanbags all day long. They kept me busy, and it was really, really a whole lot of fun. I have to admit, and I think Mr. Schleicher may have stepped out, but there was a pumpkin carving contest, and I did not come in first place, sadly. Those honors were reserved for the sheriff's office for the second year in a row. They did a fantastic job. I thought maybe there was a violation of the rules there for a minute, but he clarified that only indeed 3 people were involved in carving the pumpkin. So I have to say he won it fair and square and did a really fantastic job. Those pictures are floating around. And then Clerk Schleicher's team and my team came in tied for second place. So lots of fun that we had at that event. So tomorrow, something that hasn't been mentioned, because I am the only member of the regional building meeting, so that is going on tomorrow. I will participate in the Opioid Council and the jail tour. And I think those are primary, a few other small meetings, but those are the primary things going on this week. So we can move on to item 7.
Item number 7 is community service organization reports, and there are none.
Item 8.
Item number 8 is public comment on items not scheduled on the agenda. This is the public's opportunity to speak on an item not scheduled on today's agenda. And Madam Vice Chair, I didn't have anyone sign in ahead of time.
Okay, is there anyone here that would like to speak on items not on the agenda? It looks like there is no one online. Item 9.
Item number 9 is the called up consent calendar, and there are no items called up.
Item 10.
Item number 10 is department and committee reports, non-action items. 10A, 2024 budget hearing number 3, budget reports and critical needs, and citizen outreach group presentation. Nikki Simmons, Chief Financial Officer.
Good morning, Commissioners. Nikki Simmons, Chief Financial Officer. We're here today to conduct budget hearing number 3, which is our second day of our critical needs hearings from our departments and offices. Today we'll be hearing from our county treasurer's office, our sheriff's office, our 4th Judicial District Attorney's office, our coroner, the county attorney, and then you'll be receiving a report from our citizens outreach group, who's been tasked with overseeing the citizen side of our budget and getting a presentation from their chair. So unless there are questions for me at this point, I don't have any further updates for you. And our first presentation is from our county treasurer, Mr. Chuck Berman.
Good morning, Madam Vice Chair, County Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to present a little update from our Treasurer's Office on operating indicators, some good news that we have had this year in our office, and then also our critical need for 2024. So first, see if I can remember how to operate. There we go. All right, it's been a year since I've had to come up here, so thank you. So First thing is annual tax statements. Last year, we sent out 270,000 tax statements to citizens, property owners. This year, we have seen an increase of about 13,000. That's because, as you are well aware, sitting on the planning boards and improving plats, we continue to grow as a community, and we continue to see the dividing of parcels and the erection of homes and apartments and stuff like that. So we anticipate that will continue to grow in the years to come. We also send delinquent tax notices. So most of our citizens pay on time, but some do not, and require a little bit of prodding and reminder from our office. So we send out reminders to folks to remember to make those tax payments, because that does fund other governmental entities in addition to the county. We usually see a little bit of a dip in odd years, and that's what we've seen here. Last year we had 13,195. We saw a little over 1,000 fewer this year, and that's because the assessor's office sends out their notice of valuation, and that's usually a reminder to folks. They usually call our office wanting to know what their taxes will be, because they'll see a statement and they get a little nervous and a little antsy, and they'll call our office and ask about what their taxes will be the next year. And that's usually a good opportunity to remind people, hey, you're not up to date on your tax payments currently for this year. So we tend to see fewer notices that we have to send out in odd number of years because of the notice of valuation that the assessor's office sends. Property tax payments processed, we saw an increase. Not quite aware of why we're seeing that increase. It could be as people pay off their homes and they're no longer using their mortgage company to pay that escrow amount that they have coming out of each month's payment, or if people are being a little more budget conscious about how they make those payments. You can make one payment and pay the whole tax amount due once, or you can spread it out over a period of months, but we are seeing more people utilize that first and second payment to pay their taxes. Non-property tax revenues transactions, we see, hold it, let me drop back. Tax roll changes. We saw less this year because of our integration both in the assessor's office with RealWare and in the treasurer's office with CollectWare. So we put some of those activities on hold while we did the data conversion. So we expect to see those bump up next year. Non-property tax revenue transactions, those are assessments we do for various community, stormwater collection, the assessor's office filings and stuff like that. That's what's comprised in that number. Tax liens sold. Next month we will be doing our mobile home tax lien sale. We expect that to be about typical of what we normally see. Tax liens sold for real estate, and I have good news on that, and I'll say that in the next slide. But we saw a little bit more than we saw in previous years. We expect annually to run around 2,000 or so of tax liens for people who don't make their payments. That property tax goes to sale, and then investors buy those at a very good interest rate of 15% right now. So it's a good investment vehicle. So we collect that, and that allows taxing districts to be whole. So your fire district, your school districts and stuff can receive the revenue they're supposed to. And then that count generates interest, so that when the property owner finally pays that property tax, they'll pay that interest rate to the investor for that property. Tax deeds issued, about the same as last year, but there was a recent Supreme Court decision, Tyler versus Hennepin County, that has put the issuing of tax deeds. So after someone buys liens on properties for 3 years, they can begin the process to acquire that property through a treasurer's deed. And due to that recent Supreme Court decision earlier this year about potentially illegal takings, that has put the transmittal of tax lien certificates and treasurer's deeds on hold for the time being. Myself and other treasurers from around the state are working to draft a bill that we hope to remedy that, so that we can go forward into the future. Certificate of taxes due reports. So when a homeowner makes an offer on a home, they have to make sure at closing that all the taxes are paid beforehand. So that's a generation of those. We're seeing a little bit of a decrease because of the slowing market due to rising interest rates. And then we are the county's banker, so we issue checks or warrants on their behalf. And that 5,715 number, while lower than last year, it's a year-to-date number, and that will grow as business is conducted for the county. Next slide, good news. So our treasurer's office successfully implemented a new tax collection system, Harris Governs Collectware, and we worked in partnership with the assessor's office in that. They went to RealWare, which is also a product of Harris Govern. So we both began that migration here earlier this year and completed that with our go live in the middle of August. That was the best time for both entities, the assessor's office and our office, to do that migration. We still have some things that we have to work through for end of year work, business process and beginning year, but we've done our user acceptance testing, so we feel very confident of that. I just want to thank Head of County IT, Jeff Eckert, and his leadership, County IT project managers that help keep us on task. The assessor's office did a lot of work to help us through this process, and then our vendor, Harris Govern. It takes many hands to make a successful project, and I wish to thank each and every one of those for that. And then finally, the good news I told you about our tax lien sale. So in the past, we always had old-fashioned auctions where we had an auctioneer selling, and it was usually a very grueling 3 days of auctioning and the like. And I made the decision to go ahead and do that online. And what that does is that extends that universe across the nation for people to invest in those tax liens. And what that resulted in is a couple of things. We have sold every lien, so there's no county lien held. So that means there's nothing that the county holds, there's nothing that various entities is not receiving tax receipts for. So that's good for our community, good for other geopolitical districts. And then it was so popular that we had overbidding to the tune of $170,000. So that will go into our general fund for disposition based on your budget decisions. So good news with our online tax lien sale.
Question?
And then Commissioner Vanderwerf has a question.
Sure. Yes, thank you, Madam Vice Chair. So I recall we've had several conversations with regard to the replacement of the VAX system. I don't recall off the top of my head, it was called Harris Govern, but that's okay. That was the tool that was obviously chosen. But could you give us just a couple of points of the advantage? Now, new versus old is a general statement. Being more efficient at doing the operations, I'm sure it does. But you might be able to provide a concrete, specific one or two items so that we can get that on the record for one of the reasons for converting. So
some of the reasons may just be very practical. When you have a 35-year-old system, any computer system, the ability to support that system falls away over time. You no longer have software engineers who can continue to update that product and safeguard it from risks and hacking risk and such. So this product, the VAX, was developed in-house 35 years by software developers, and many have gone and retired from the county, went on to other things. So the ability to support that. Also, the hardware used to be the county had VAX hardware here, and getting parts for that just is next to impossible to find anymore. So county IT found a way to make a server that would emulate that software program. So what we're seeing is a number of things that we couldn't do before that allows us the flexibility to do going forward. So when it came to reports and data that we needed to provide to other people, other entities, other taxing districts, reporters want to know about who is the top 10 taxpayers in the county. That was something that was very hard for us to generate as far as reports. So the ease of getting information to key decision makers and the members of the public is much easier on their newer system. It operates faster, so we can do more transactions. At the beginning of the year, when your mortgage companies send us your escrow from what they collected for your taxes, that was a very arduous and time-consuming, labor-consuming practice. This automates that practice. So there's a lot of functionality that makes things smoother and better, but it's also the acknowledgement that our older system could no longer be supported.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. And then finally, with my critical needs request. As with anything, inflation has hit the country hard, from rising food costs, transportation costs, fuel costs, decisions by the current administration that has rendered transportation and fuel costs higher. It has exacerbated costs in many other areas, and government is not an exception. So we mail a lot of information out to our citizens with respect to tax notices, and it's a core requirement in law for us to do that. So we've had a number of postage increases this past year. We've already had 2 increases. There's another one proposed for the first of the year, and I'm hearing there's also another one not far down the pike. So our request is the acknowledgement of those increased costs to get important notifications to our property owners. So with that, I am requesting $37,000 for increased postage so that we can continue to collect and distribute the funds that are necessary. We collect over $715 million, a couple of zeros there, $715 million in property taxes for the county and other entities that include 17 school districts and 330 other taxing districts. So with that, I'm concluded. Have any questions?
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. First of all, just want to thank you and the Treasurer's Office for all the great work that you do. When you think about 330 taxing districts, and I never hear about any controversy, it means you're getting the job done, and that is not a trivial task. So I just want to thank you and the team for everything that you're doing, and certainly understand, postal increases and so forth. I do have one question, though. On 330 taxing districts, are there any taxing districts that you don't do the tax collection for, or is that basically like everybody?
It's mandated in state statute for me to do that, yes.
Okay, so everybody?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I've always been wondering if it was really, truly comprehensive on every public agency that collects tax, or if there were a few that maybe were excused from you doing that task, and there were a few out there. It's kind of interesting because I actually got a question from somebody just this week. If we're doing tax collection on behalf of other public agencies like school districts in the city and what have you, are we getting reimbursed by them?
We do. There is a percentage, a treasure fee that we do collect, and that goes into the general fund for operations. So it's a percentage based on the entity. So it's typically 1% to 2% depending on the geopolitical district.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Commissioner Williams.
Yes, I will again reiterate my least favorite federal government agency is the Postal Service, but one thing that you didn't include here that you do is you sit on our retirement board.
Yes.
By statute. And I just appreciate you keeping an eye on our employees' money and on those investments and making sure that the retirement board is operating successfully, transparently, and staying out of trouble.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your kind words on our team. They've worked very hard. They are carrying on 2 duties. They were doing the normal functions under the VAC system while parallelly developing and testing our new CollectWare system. So they did that, and thank you for the remark about the retirement board. And I also said on the healthcare board here for the county, and I appreciate what Nikki Simmons and the leadership here does in giving benefits to our employees. Always been very creative about how we can do a little more for our employees each and every year in that arena of our benefits. And then also thank you for your consideration on anything you can do for our employees with increases to offset the increased inflation costs that we're seeing at this time. So I thank you. All right.
Looks like no additional questions.
All right. Thank you very much. You guys have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. And so my understanding is that unfortunately the sheriff could not be here today. So if you'll introduce yourself and proceed.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I'm Jeff Kramer. I'm the Undersheriff with the Sheriff's Office. And County Commissioners, thank you for having me. I am here on behalf of Sheriff Roybal, who unfortunately could not be here. Believe me, if he could be, he would, but he is quite sick, so he couldn't make it in today. So I have the privilege to be here before all of you today to talk about the Sheriff's Office critical needs for 2024. So I appreciate the time this morning. Hopefully, I am as quick as Mr. Borman on how to drive the machine here this morning. Great. So on the beginning of our presentation, we identified and kind of laid in the basic structure of our strategic plan, which basically points right towards the goals for the Sheriff's Office for the Sheriff's first term. I'm not going to read through the first several slides, but we put that in there on purpose so that we can specifically return back to and point out the fact that our critical needs that we identify in the presentation, in the slides that follow, directly connect to those goals and objectives that the sheriff has for his first term in office, which directly relates to community trust, which is to increase community trust through improved communications and transparency, reduce victims, which of course is to reduce the number of crime victims in the community, quality service, which we do through improving the quality of service provided to the citizens with a qualified and engaged workforce dedicated to continuous improvement. And then lastly, legislation, which you know the sheriff is very engaged on this front by proactively support responsible legislation and work to combat legislation which is bad for public safety and contrary to a healthy and safe community. These slides simply point towards some objectives that are kind of sub-bullets to those things and the ways that we intend on accomplishing those. And if you were to read through the strategic plan that we have that's already out for public consumption, posted in different areas on our website and in other places, what you'd see is our 7 divisions within the office did fantastic work through the division commanders and other leaders in identifying how those particular divisions would contribute and move forward in being able to flesh out and accomplish these very comprehensive objectives and the way we're going to move forward over the next 4 years plus. To state our critical needs right up front, and then I'll explain the justification for those in the slides that follow. Our first request is for an additional $2.5 million to cover the costs and expenditures required for our contracted medical provider in the jail. All of you sitting before me are all too familiar with the importance of the medical contract and a very qualified and robust vendor inside our jail providing those medical services for our inmate population. The second request is for $500,000 to cover increased costs for extraditions. Over the past few years, we have witnessed a significant rise in expenses related to extraditions, including the area of staffing and the costs related to overtime and just salaries for the deputies that are responsible for conducting those, as well as transportation and travel costs for extraditions, and then of course the administrative overhead as well. The escalating costs in both of these areas have compromised some of our ongoing delivery for high quality and services that we deliver to the community. And in order for us to continue that high expectation that all of you have, as well as the community members have for the delivery of public safety services, it is important that we ask for these critical needs and increase staffing in these, or I'm sorry, increase funds in these areas, and that we secure those funds so that we can continue to deliver those services in the way and manner that all of you expect us to do in the community as well. When you think about those pillars, the strategic plan pillars that I mentioned before, and you consider the critical needs that I just mentioned, they of course tie directly back. I'm not going to belabor that point, but if you think about, for instance, the medical provider in the jail and the increasing cost there and the need for increased funds in that matter, obviously, it's very important as it relates to our inmate population that we do a fantastic job in delivering the best medical care that we can. As all of you know, part of that contract for medical care for our inmate population does in fact include mental health care for the inmate population. All of you have had numerous occasions to visit the facility and hear about cases and circumstances that we face and our deputies face and our professional staff members face inside the facility where mental health is the driving factor behind incidents, use of force incidents, and other things. And it is oh so important that we have a medical provider inside the jail that delivers not only that acute type care for medical services, but also comprehensive mental health care as well. And of course, that's part of these contracts in the past and ongoing moving forward. And so in order for us to be able to do that and to make sure that we have qualified vendors coming in, we need to make sure that those costs are recognized because they have gone up over the years, which you'll see in the slides that follow. Of course, all of you are very familiar with the sheriff's statutory obligations in both of these areas. He is, by statute, the custodian of the jail and also statutorily mandated to transport prisoners, whether that's here locally or subject to extradition as well. Specifically on the comments and notes for medical expenditures and increases, this here shows the significant increase in rise in medical contract costs that we've seen as an office since 2016, where in 2016 we were sitting just north of about $5 million, and now in 2024 those costs will be sitting just at about $11 million. Breaking that down, same numbers, but just adding some additional information for you. When you consider the cost increase from 2016 to just into 2023, not considering the 2024 costs, the increase in costs was just above $4.3 million, which represents an increase of 182% in cost increase over that time. Obviously, it would be even more when you consider the cost increase from 2023 to 2024. When you consider the impact to our budget and the consumption of the budget, if you will, from the medical contract, it represents 30 to really actually about 40% of the operating budget. It is the largest single contract that we have within our budget for the Sheriff's Office, the medical contract, that is. Similar information, but just as it relates to the general fund budget and the percentage of that over that same time period, you see there that it consumes a significant portion of the general fund budget for the Sheriff's Office through that course of time. Moving on to extraditions. Extraditions are something that we stay extremely busy with, something that you're probably familiar with. The District Attorney's Office is who determines which defendants are going to be extradited, but it becomes the sheriff's statutory mandate to end up going and actually transporting those prisoners, as mentioned before. To give you an idea on volume, you see some overall kind of annual captures. From 2022, we conducted 167 extraditions. And in 2023, from January through about the third week of September, we are already at 147. To break that down to what we're seeing kind of operationally week by week, we're doing anywhere from 3 to 5 trips per week for extraditions. We have to staff that with 2 deputies, at least 2 deputies per trip for safety and other reasons. Those trips might be something that requires, more often than not, requires a flight where we're having to fly somewhere to pick up that defendant. If it's close by, perhaps either in-state or an adjacent state, then we'll oftentimes, those deputies will do that on a road trip and drive a vehicle. We had been using an outside contractor to do extraditions for us, or at least kind of split the task, if you will. But COVID ended up having an impact on that because that outside contractor, when like so many of us and so many operations and businesses, they too were impacted. They started to have a problem with their own staffing. People didn't want to do that job too much, thinking of the idea of getting into a van for a road trip with criminal defendants or inmates who likely had COVID. There were high occurrences of that, as you know. So they had trouble with their own staffing. And so they had trouble staffing the trips. They started to see increased costs. Those costs were passed on to us and other customers, if you will. So we saw costs increase, and we decided we needed to make a break from that. And we took them all in-house, if you will, primarily. And we started doing that as of about May of 2022. But those costs in terms of travel costs have continued to go up. And then, of course, you see the breakdown by category as it relates to the salary costs, whether that's paying for the deputies who are on the trips or backfilling by overtime for when they leave their primary post. If we have, for instance, a court services deputy who has to leave the courtroom, if you will, to go do an extradition, we have to backfill that post to fill the courtroom while the other deputy's on the trip. This lift is so significant, or has been so significant, we've had to reach and kind of do things differently, operation and office-wide, where we're asking for office-wide help to make this work. What we've seen previously is that our court services area, our court and transport area of the office, which is in our detention operations division, had been previously been able to kind of manage this lift kind of on their own within that division. Because of the sheer volume, that is no longer possible. And so we said, hey, we're going to have to look across the office and make this an office-wide ask for assistance to make these trips work. And so now what we'll see is we'll have, whether it's a patrol deputy or a deputy within a special operations area, assisting and going on these trips as well to kind of spread the burden, if you will, office-wide because of the sheer volume. You can see the costs associated with the number of extraditions that we're doing, and these continue to be pretty relentless in their volume and pace. Additionally, we purchased 4 vehicles, specifically for extraditions, a couple vans, and also 2 interceptors, Ford Interceptors, and 4 extraditions. As you can imagine, these vehicles mile out relatively quickly, or at least more quickly than other vehicles in our fleet, because they're doing long road trips. So to summarize, again, we're asking for the $2.5 million for the medical contract and the $500,000 for the extradition costs. You can see what that does as it relates to the 2024 base budget, just north of $62 million. When you add that $3 million total, you have a base budget there of $65 million. And of course, the PST restricted fund is down there on that bottom line there. Questions?
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you, Madam Vice Chair. First of all, thank you very much for the presentation this morning. And I'm sorry that Sheriff Roybal couldn't be here. I'm certain that his heart is in this, and he's probably watching. And I just want to, if he is watching, I just want to thank him for the great work that he's doing as well. But also thank you for the entire team. And I know what a challenge the jail has been. It's been tough on everybody. We've received several briefings on some of the challenges are there. And so appreciate, your presentation here with regard to that. So that is just a big issue and a big concern, and I'm glad that we're doing an enormous amount of things, including what you've showed on the charts about the increase of the costs and so forth, and trying to address those problems in an even more effective way. I do want to ask a question, though, on the extradition expenditures. I believe what you said and everything about it, but I'm looking at chart 15, and I'm not sure how I get to at least from where the chart is presented, how you get to a $500,000 cost. If you look at the number of extraditions from 22 to 23, the number is down on the overall aggregate, but maybe it has something to do with the 94 to 130 about El Paso County. And then the miscellaneous expenses, looks like it's down. Salary is clearly up. That's a serious increase. and so forth and so on. I'm sure the vehicle cost in 2022 was just a one-time procurement that's going to last for several years because I read the notes. So I believe that, you've got a valid request. I'm just not sure how I see that validation in the chart. So maybe you could explain that for me.
Sure, I think I can, Mr. Commissioner. Part of that is because in 2022, we have a split year because you see the bottom note on the bottom left corner. In May of 2022, that's when we switched and started using internal personnel almost exclusively. Up to that time, we were using that external vendor a lot more. And so we had a lot of those costs were on that external contract. And so once we started doing that internally almost exclusively at that May timeframe, we started to recognize those costs that you see internally. And that's why as you look to those 2023 costs, they start to add up much quicker because we see those in the salaries and our own internal fuel costs, vehicle costs, et cetera, different than what we saw in 2022 for almost the first half of that year. You may. I don't know.
Good morning, Commissioners. One thing I want to add to what our undersheriff said is I actually had that exact same question for our sheriff, and I asked what the rationalization behind that. And part of that isn't just the increase from 22 to 23. It's an increase that's been happening since 2020 that is not built into their base budget. And so the sheriff's office over the last couple of years has been able to absorb those higher costs because our public safety tax has been coming in fairly robustly. And now that that's leveling off and even falling a little bit, they can't sustain paying those costs out of their general fund like they could the last couple of years. And while that public safety tax is not initially designed to be able to pay for extradition costs, they were able to pay things out of public safety tax and use their general fund for extradition, but their budget cannot absorb that any longer. So these costs have really gone from just a couple of $100,000 a couple of years ago to now closer to $1 million a year. And so they really need this $500,000 as a supplement to their budget to be able to continue to process extraditions like they have been in the last couple of years. So it's not just the increase from 22 to 23 that we really should be looking at. It's more a sustained issue that's been happening the last couple of years.
Great, thank you. That's very helpful to have that context for this particular request here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Williams.
Well, I think the increase can also be related to the cost of fuel and such to get the inmates back here. The question I have is, I know that sometimes the state of Colorado houses prisoners in our jail and they reimburse us. Is that still happening? And are the reimbursements still meeting the level we need to have them reimburse us for?
Yes, ma'am, it is. So the amount of reimbursement for DOC prisoners, for instance, is set by statute. So we follow that. But we also charge, for instance, for municipalities. So CSPD is our largest customer in terms of the number of arrestees that they bring to our facility, and so we also charge for those arrestees in the facility as well. All of those things are billed out very, very appropriately. Now, does that equal the actual? There's a difference between the actual cost it takes to house an inmate in the facility on a daily rate versus what we charge. But those things are all set and tracked, and we update those on an occasional basis by virtue of what the sheriff wants to do from term to term. But as it relates to DOC prisoners specifically, statutorily guided.
Okay, I appreciate that. I know one of the frustrating things to explain to constituents is that jail medical contract. So that continues to be a frustration as the costs increase, but it is something that we are required by law to provide. And as I say, even the federal government is smart enough to stay out of that one. They won't help us with it. So thanks.
Yes, ma'am. Good points.
Mr. Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you, Madam Vice Chair. And I appreciate actually Commissioner Williams's comments. And maybe you mentioned it and I just didn't pick it up, but you do provide services on behalf of the state. And I think I heard you say that what you can charge the state is set by statute. But I seem to recall in the past also, so maybe this is a question about if this is still valid or if something has changed in the last year or two, that what the state can reimburse you for is below what your actual costs are. So you actually eat some of that into your own general funds budget. So is that still true? And is there something that could be done about that, like maybe working legislatively to have that dollar figure adjusted to an appropriate number?
Yes, on both questions. It is still true in that the cost that is reimbursed, that is set by statute, is in fact lower than what it actually costs us to house a single inmate per day. The last numbers that I saw as an example, and this is even, I'll call it dated information, let's say about a year old. So it would have been old medical contract numbers, old food contract numbers, et cetera, put us at around $165 per day, roughly, to house an inmate per day. Whereas the reimbursement cost from DOC per day, Jane, do you have the number offhand? It's in like the 90s, I want to say, without having the number in front of me. And so there is a discrepancy there between those figures.
I recall it was a pretty substantial difference. So I don't know what that looks like as far as the total scale and how many from the state you actually help incarcerate in the jail, but it just seems to me it's just only fair to try to ask the state to maybe change that number. So love to, I imagine that you are always working on that, but I'd love to be part of asking the state to get that number to a realistic number. And then one other question I have for you, and it's just something that I just haven't heard. Perhaps I'll get all this in detail on the jail tour on Friday. But we were, prior to COVID, very, very close to the maximum numbers that were incarcerated in the jail. And then in COVID, the numbers went down substantially and so forth. I have to imagine it's probably been drifting back up. But where do we stand generally today as kind of a general average, as far as how much occupancy is in the jail?
Commissioner, I'm happy to report that actually, although we did trickle back up after COVID kind of opened itself up a bit and the criminal justice world got back to a little bit normal pace, but we have not gone back up too terribly much. So at our lowest point during the COVID timeframe, we did go all the way down in the 800s. Having been up as high as up in the 1700s, which is what you're referring to. But we've only trickled back up to in the low 1200s. Currently today, we're sitting at about 1221. And that isn't too bad overall because our capacity, when you really consider the fact, we used to consider our capacity to be 1,837 beds, but really you have to actually reduce those numbers because the two sprung structures, we refer to them as the tents, those sprung structures on the north side of the campus there are not inmate ready, if you will. And so you have to reduce that 1,837 by 144 beds. And so whatever that math is, kind of in the high 1600s there, that would be our true bed count. And so we're at that, again, we're in those low 1200s compared against that high 1600 bed space available.
Great, thank you. Appreciate the update. I always had in the back of my mind it was somewhere around 1700.
Yes, sir.
So that sounds like I'm pretty close. But I appreciate the update from kind of what has happened post-COVID. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, if there are no additional questions, I think that we are ready to move forward. And I'm going to turn the meeting over to Chair Bremer, who has just arrived, if that's okay. But we are coming up on the 4th Judicial District.
Thank you again for the time this morning.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Vice Chair and County Commissioners. Thank you for allowing us to come over and chat with you about your DA's office and the work that we're doing on behalf of the citizens of the 4th Judicial District. As is typical, I've brought some folks over with me. One is to familiarize them with what this process looks like so that they can see the work that you all do as their county commissioners, but also too so that they can hear what I anticipate will be some kind words from you all about the hard work that they're doing to achieve justice for the citizens of this district, the 4th Judicial District. I also want to start out by thanking you all for your continued support during my tenure as district attorney here in the 4th Judicial. All 5 of you have been very staunch supporters of our public safety contingent here in the district, including our sheriff's office and your DA's office, and I'm eternally grateful for that. It takes all of us fighting and rowing in the same direction to achieve justice for our community, and you all play an important part in that. So as you all know, we are a constitutional and a statutory office. So we derive all of our powers and authorities through that Colorado Constitution and Colorado Revised Statutes. Our organizational chart is largely the same. As is typical in the past, I have 3 direct reports that come to me. Those are the Assistant District Attorney, Brent Nelson, our Director of Communications, Kate Singh, and then our Budget and Finance Director, Lauren Burris. And then the big difference is, it's probably hard to see, but in our county court, district court alignment, and we'll see some of these stats in just a moment, but the way that cases are coming in, our county court folks are actually, their caseloads are going up and our district court numbers are going down. So we've actually shifted 2 of our attorney positions into county court to augment those forces so that they can handle a growing caseload in misdemeanor land and in traffic. But it really takes everybody in the DA's office, and that's the downside to an organizational chart like this, which is a broad overview. It takes everybody in the office working hard day to day to make sure that we satisfy our mission. Everybody from Francine, Carolina, and Amanda in reception, through our intake and filing folks, which is a bigger team, but just to mention a couple, Brittany and Carla, and then our discovery team. Our discovery obligations continue to grow. A large part of that is because of body-worn camera. As we all know, statutory changes have required law enforcement officers that interact with the public to be equipped with body-worn camera. We have to then discover all of that footage out to defense so that defendants can have a fair shake at trial. And so our discovery team continues to grow, and that's actually one of my asks is to improve and add some folks to discovery. But we've got a big team, including Matt, Kyle, Emily, Nicole, and Aaron. Again, it takes all of them pushing hard to make sure that we can do the job that we do on behalf of the public. Our mission has stayed the same. Put simply, it's public safety and justice for our community. We all have learned over the last year that tragedy can strike our community at any given time. And when a big tragedy strikes, it's a surprise to everybody, and it has a wide-ranging impact on our community and our world. The good thing is, thanks to the support that you all have given us, is that your DA's office stands ready to respond with professional certainty. And what that means is that we are equipped to take on and prosecute the biggest of cases. Essentially, the time is always right to do what is right, and your DA's office, thanks to your support, is able to do that on a day-to-day basis. As you know, we proudly serve all of El Paso and Teller counties. As I was sitting here listening to the other presenters this morning, I was noticing the El Paso County seal, which has a Pikes Peak on it and then the waves of grain bundled together. I like to say that the 4th Judicial District is literally Purple Mountain's majesty, 2 waving fields of grain. We have both sides of Pikes Peak, and it's a unique office. It's a unique office because it's the sole office responsible for an entire large metro and rural area. By comparison, in the state of Colorado, the Denver metro area, the other big population center in the state, is served by 4 separate DA's offices, whereas this area is served by 1 DA's office. And that adds an extra element of professionalism that we have. It changes the way that we operate within the larger community, and I think we're doing it better than any other DA's office in the state of Colorado. No surprise, again, you've seen these slides before, but we partner with local law enforcement, local and federal law enforcement, I should say. We are at the center of the criminal justice universe here in the 4th Judicial District. Because of that, we are the chief law enforcement office in the 4th Judicial District. Nothing happens in criminal court without your DA's office filing complaints, arguing motions, and seeking justice on behalf of victims. We work closely with 23 or more law enforcement agencies, and I'm privileged to work closely with 2 great sheriffs. Obviously, we just heard from the El Paso County Sheriff's Office under Sheriff Jeff Kramer, but specifically Sheriff Joe Roybal and Jason Mikesell up in Teller County are doing fantastic work in the 4th Judicial, and I'm privileged to work with both of them. Together, partnering with our law enforcement agencies, together we seek the truth so that we can punish the wicked.
Our office has grown slowly over the years, but we currently sit at 250 total employees. We have 132 support staff, 26 sworn investigators, and 92 attorneys. It is unbeknownst to a lot of people in the community. You all have heard me say this, but we are the largest law firm in Southern Colorado. When you couple that many attorneys in one building working hard on behalf of the citizens, is a big office and all focused on fighting for victims. You've seen our court responsibilities before, so I'm not going to belabor the points on all of these, but these sort of lay out where our work is being done. Most importantly, in this slide is, I like to point out our problem-solving courts. We have DUI court, DV court, our Veterans Trauma Court, and our Recovery Court. The favorite for me is our Veterans Trauma Court, partly because of my veteran status, but also because this community has a very large population of veterans, both actively serving and retired. And this is a way for us to uniquely address the challenges that veterans face after serving in war and being receiving some sort of a disability connected to their service, and then that disability causes them to commit some law violation. And this helps them get back on their feet and be productive members of society. Each one of those veterans, by the way, raised their right hand and swore to pay the ultimate sacrifice on behalf of all of us. And this is a small way in which we can serve that community. Through our primary responsibilities, we have county court, which is really our entry-level prosecution assignment. And it's where we bring new attorneys, even if they have experience, into the DA's office to learn about the culture and the way that we do things here. It's primarily misdemeanors. There's some traffic in there. We also have an appellate unit that handles all appeals and unique research needs. And then district court is where the majority of our cases that hit the front page of the newspaper are happening. That's our felony caseload. It includes our special victims unit, which is our sex-related cases. Our organized crime unit, if you remember back to last year, we changed that unit from our economic crime unit to our organized crime unit. That was really an effort to be more flexible, to deal with the things that are popping up in our community. And really, they are at the tip of the spear in the fight against fentanyl. I met with one of our attorneys just yesterday on 3 different fentanyl-related death cases to come up with an attack plan on those types of cases. And they are literally, like I said, at the tip of the spear, working every day against that dangerous poison that's infiltrating our community. Our felony intake, I mentioned earlier, is working hard to bring in those cases, get the right charges filed, and put us on the right foot going forward. Secondary assignments are our homicide on-call team and our vehicular homicide assault on-call team. These folks are literally on-call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They respond out to the scenes of murders, vehicular homicides, right alongside first responders, and are embedded with those investigations throughout the entirety of that investigation, and then are tasked with prosecuting that case if there's criminal charges that stem from those investigations. You can imagine the things that they see, the things that they smell, the things that they will never forget as a result of those assignments. We also have our animal cruelty unit that continues to do good work. And then we have a law enforcement agency liaison. So every law enforcement agency in the 4th Judicial District has a liaison assigned to them so that we can have good communication between our respective agencies. Our community engagement is comprised of our UCCS law enforcement intern program, our recruiting/law school intern program. I'll note that our law school intern program has been instrumental in getting our attorney staffing levels to where they need to be. This is something that is still an outgrowth of the COVID pandemic, that the number of attorneys graduating from law schools has actually gone down. Those folks that are interested in getting into public service is less than it used to be. And so every DA's office across the country is actually experiencing difficulty in hiring attorneys, finding people that want to serve in this particular unique way. And so our recruiting of interns and then creating sort of a farm team through that, pipelines essentially, to our attorney ranks has been instrumental. And other DA's offices in the state of Colorado are now trying to mirror what we're doing to augment their staffing levels as well. I'll give you an example. Pueblo still is at 40% staffing of their levels. So that just gives you a very stark indication of the difficulties that DA's offices are having. We have not had that same level of difficulty. We also have our Kids Against Crime program and then our volunteer program, which in 2022, we had 96 volunteers that volunteered a total of 13,697 hours. The number up there I think is wrong, but that's outdated. That's a small picture of some of our volunteers. The older gentleman sort of third to the from the left there, Al Patton, has been, he's got a long history. He's from back east, so he's got a thick back east accent. Lots of fun stories to tell, and is so dedicated to helping out in the volunteer realm. So this is our 2022 diversion snapshot. Reason why I like to point this out is that this really talks about second chances in addition to our specialty courts. Not every case we handle requires the hammer, and that's what these cases represent. So our human trafficking diversion program, we had 2 cases last year with a 100% success rate, meaning that everybody that came through there successfully passed it. Our sexting diversion, 6 cases accepted with 100% success. For those that don't understand what sexting is, that's really dealing with juveniles who don't understand the implications of social media and the power that they have in their phones and what taking nude photos might do to them long term. There's actually a law that deals with sexting, and that's what this is all about, is getting those juveniles into this program and then educating them about the dangers of this sort of thing and giving them the tools to avoid that peer pressure in the future. We also have the juvenile diversion program, which is really big, 248 cases accepted with an 81% success rate. Minor in possession, that's 70 cases accepted with 81% success. Adult diversion, 42 cases accepted with 69% success. And then you've all heard of neighborhood justice, which is really mediation. So that's where you bring the 2 parties together at a table with a mediator and you talk about whatever happened and you hopefully resolve those issues so that that can be avoided in the future. 255 total cases accepted with a 68% success rate. So in total, 623 total cases were accepted into our diversion programs with varying levels of success, but all of them above 68% success. I didn't cycle through each one of the bullet points, but there they are now. And then we continue to fight hard for victims. We lead the state in the number of dollars achieved in restitution ordered for victims. This year, well, in 2022, $6,728,313 in restitution ordered, which is up from $5,469,000 just last year. In victim compensation, we awarded $1,274,000 and $63.47 in victim comp. That's up from $1,162,000 last year. And then in the last year, 26,302 total cases prosecuted. That number also leads the state of Colorado. So we are doing more work on behalf of the citizens of the 4th Judicial District than any other DA's office in the state. We refuse to compromise in the 4th Judicial District. In between 2018 and 2022, population growth in this area, as you all know, you grapple with the issues dealing with infrastructure more than any other group in this area. You know that the population has outpaced the growth in the rest of the state. Our violent crime rate across the state has increased 23% over the last 5 years. Homicides for the state of Colorado increased by 75%. That number should be eye-popping to most people. Here in the 4th Judicial District, it has increased, but not to the same level as the rest of the state, 47.7%. Aggravated assault in the state, 43.7% increase. 4th JAD, 28.9%. What we're seeing across the board in cases is that the solve rates are actually going down, meaning that police departments are having trouble to a different degree in clearing cases or solving cases. That's not their fault. That is the fault of the legislature that has continually had a war on policing over the last roughly 5 years from 2017 through today. And so their solve rates have actually decreased, meaning that less cases are actually coming into DA's offices. When we get to the slide in comparison to our office and some other offices in the state, you'll see the numbers of filings have actually gone down for almost every single one of those DA's offices. We're not unique in that way. Interestingly, property crime has a 17% increase over 5 years statewide. Motor vehicle theft, you all know we lead the entire country in the rate of motor vehicle theft. It's increased by 107% over the last 5 years for the state of Colorado. That number for the 4th Judicial District should surprise you. Only 11% increase here in the 4th Judicial District. That's because of the hard work of our law enforcement and the hard work of these folks in the DA's office on behalf of our citizens. And that's a point of extreme pride for me. Burglary, increase of 4.5% statewide. It's actually decreased here in the 4th Judicial District, down 3.3%. And when, just to point out again, that we refuse to compromise. We are facing continual criminal justice reform in the state of Colorado, yet our numbers are better than the state of Colorado. It's because of our law enforcement commitment to our community, and then us working closely with our law enforcement partners to make sure that we hold the line on public safety, refusing to compromise in the face of extreme hardship. Here are those benchmark comparisons. The top box is a focus on the 4th JD over a 3-year time span. So if you look at total cases filed 2020 to 2022, you can see that those numbers have declined for 3 straight years. That means less cases are coming in, so less cases are being filed, and I expect to see that trend continuing going forward because of the difficulties that I just mentioned with law enforcement staffing levels. The lower box is a comparison to the other districts in the state. You can see that we lead in all of those categories continuously. For a point of comparison, the 2nd Judicial District is Denver City and County. The 18th Judicial District is our neighbor just to the north. That district is going to be splitting in 2025, so that'll turn into the 18th and the 23rd Judicial District. But they are our closest competitor and closest comparison point, and yet we are far exceeding what they do up there. 1st Judicial District is Jefferson and Gilpin counties, and then 8th Judicial District is Larimer County up in Fort Collins, basically. I would point out as well that our budget is, when you compare it to the Denver metro area, our budget is between $10 and $15 million less than their budgets. I don't say that as a point of saying that we should get more necessarily. I say that as a point to say that our office is doing more with less. We're being more fiscally responsible than those offices are. We're filing more cases despite those financial differences, and we are achieving more justice on behalf of victims than those other offices. We are a trial-focused office. You have all heard me say this in the past. Between 90 and 95% of all cases filed in criminal court across the United States result in a plea agreement. This is really a plea-driven system, the criminal justice system in the United States. That said, we lead the state in the number of trials. We are not afraid to take a case with the given facts from an investigation and engage with the community in determining whether somebody is guilty or not guilty of a given crime. That is unique. Not all offices are so well equipped and willing to take cases to trial and engage with the community members to determine if somebody is guilty or not. You can see 2022 was the high point at 388 cases. I can tell you that I think it was just last week, we surpassed that number already this year. I expect that this year in 2023, we will exceed 400 jury trials for the first time ever. And that by far leads the state for a judicial district in terms of cases we are taking to trial. As I mentioned already this year, we've broke last year's record number of trials, and we are projected to get over 400. We welcome the prospect of jury trial. We welcome the prospect of sending our folks into trial and engaging with the community and relying on our law enforcement partners to be witnesses for us. And like I said, it's a unique way to engage with the community. We've had a renewed focus on prolific offenders. We have specialized collaboration between our office, CSPD, El Paso County Sheriff's Office, Fountain Police Department, through essentially monthly meetings to determine what resources we need to use to go after specific types of crime, where we're doing well, where we're not doing well collectively and collaboratively. And that's really identifying trends and then coming up with ways to really have an impact on those trends in a positive way. The next sections are going to be our cases of note, which there's nothing that's going to scare any of you like last year's. We don't have any audio with any of these case presentations, but they really highlight the high-level work that we're doing in the DA's office. The first is Justice for Gannon Stauch. You've all heard me talk about this case probably many times, but it was the largest investigation in 4th JD history. The primary investigative office was actually the El Paso County Sheriff's Office, but it included agencies, over 20 agencies across the United States that helped us find the truth and punish this wicked actor in this case. People were involved with this case from Florida, Rhode Island, South Carolina, Colorado, Kansas, and the Sheriff's Office bared the brunt of the majority of that, especially as that particular defendant sat in the jail for 3 years and caused all kinds of mayhem in the jail. That investigation and prosecution spanned more than 3 years. There was a 13-member trial team. I'd ask that trial team to stand up if you would. Don't be shy. This is just some of those folks that worked tirelessly on this case from the very beginning. And this case, as you all know, gained both national and international media coverage. You can sit down. National and international media coverage and responsibilities. Through the hard work of that trial team, that defendant, who we don't say the name of anymore, but we call her by her inmate number, was found by jury verdict guilty on all charges. She was sentenced to life in prison without parole, and she has subsequently been transferred to Topeka Correctional Facility in Topeka, Kansas. The reason for that is that some high-profile inmates in Colorado DOC, to protect both that inmate and the other inmates, they ship them to other states, and that's really what that's all about. I would prefer that she be held in the state of Colorado where she committed her crime, but that's not how the system works, unfortunately. Secondly, I mentioned this obliquely earlier, but the Club Q case, tragedy striking our community and having both wide impact on our community, but also wide impact on the rest of the world, really. It was the deadliest hate crime in 4th JD history. We had an immediate high-level response. Myself, the assistant DA was out. We had investigators out. We had victim advocates out from the very beginning. Our state and federal partners were out on this case from the very start. We served over 50 victims and their families. It was a very collaborative investigation and prosecution. This case also garnered both national and international media coverage and responsibilities, and was, especially at the very beginning, a very difficult task to tackle. It required all investigative agencies to work closely to make sure that we didn't say anything publicly at that early stage that would impact our ability to then prosecute and seek justice for those victims. I cannot pass this slide up without pointing out the victims in this case: Daniel Aston, Raymond Green Vance, Ashley Paw, Derek Rump, and Kelly Loving. This case is also about some heroes, most specifically Thomas James, who is currently serving the United States Navy. He engaged with this shooter. At some point, I'm sure that you all might see the video, but when you do, you'll be shocked by the bravery of Tom James. He was out on the smoke deck of that establishment, heard the gunshots, and then responded to those gunshots in the face of great peril to himself. He was shot in the abdomen in the process. He burned his hands on the barrel of the rifle of the shooter and engaged with him in a struggle that prevented more people from being killed. He was recently honored by the United States Navy and was given a unique award. I'd ask the trial team for a Club Q to please stand up. Thank you, folks. Through the impeccable investigation, no stone was left unturned. We protected against common tactics such as discovery violations that you see in big cases like this, and mental health defenses. You see, if you watch the news, what's going on up in Boulder with the King Soopers shooting. They've been fighting over competency and sanity. Because of the strong investigation in this case, we were able to avoid largely all of those pitfalls. The plea result was max sentence. And what I mean by max sentence is that we achieved the exact same sentence through a plea agreement that we would have achieved if we had gone to trial. We did that without having the impact of what trial looks like, re-victimization of victims, huge financial expense. With a team like that, many attorneys assigned to the case, that would have had a huge financial impact on the citizens of this community. And there's also the uncertainty of trial. Every time we go to trial, we accept the risk that a juror may not agree with the evidence and what we're asking them to do. In criminal court, we have to have unanimous verdicts so that all 12 jurors have to agree that somebody is either guilty or not guilty. If one person decides that that person is not guilty, then we've really expended a huge expense and have to do it again, or potentially walk away with nothing. And this plea agreement actually put aside all of those concerns. We achieved the longest sentence ever imposed in 4th Judicial District history. That was 5 consecutive life sentences plus 2,208 years also running consecutively. That defendant, also not named, has been transferred to Wyoming State Penitentiary up in Rawlins, Wyoming. It's interesting to note that, at least for me, who pays attention to crime, that he was transferred to the state that also had a high-profile hate crime occur in its state, and that was the Matthew Shepard case, where a young man in Wyoming was gay and was attacked by 2 people at a bar, tied to a fence post and beaten until he was dead. So I think it's a poetic justice that he has been transferred to that state to serve out the rest of his life in a prison cell. Layla is a survivor of animal cruelty. This case represents what we see in many of our cases, an intersection between different types of crime. In this case, specifically DUI and animal cruelty in the same case. The defendant was in a drunken rage because he couldn't get his car to start. He had previously been convicted of DUI, so he had an interlock device attached to it, and he'd been drinking that particular day, so his car would not start. So what did he do to work out his frustration? He turned to beating on Layla. That beating was witnessed by onlookers who intervened on Layla's behalf, and that person was taken to trial and convicted. Interestingly enough, he failed to appear at sentencing, so he is actually actively out on warrant status as we stand here today. If I could have the folks that worked on Layla's case please stand up. Thank you, folks. This case is an extremely sad case, Aislinn Staten Contreras. She stands for the very real and dire impact that fentanyl has had on our community, our country, and the Pikes Peak region as a whole. Her mother was a persistent drug user who had turned to fentanyl, and Aislinn was able to get some of that fentanyl and ingest it. She died at a truck stop in Fountain, Colorado. We actually just finished prosecuting her mother for Aislinn's death, for child abuse resulting in death. That instance of her ingesting of the fentanyl actually preceded our change in the law, the Fentanyl Accountability and Prevention Act. So we had to proceed under a child abuse resulting in death charge. Her mother was convicted. She is going to serve 27 years in DOC custody as a result of that child abuse resulting in death. Speaking of fentanyl, your 4th Judicial District Attorney's Office is leading the fight against fentanyl. We have filed 345 cases or charges in 2023, a 292% increase over 2022. Those numbers, I'm sure, lead the state of Colorado. We've had 133 counts of possession with intent to distribute in 118 cases. We have 5 active cases working currently involving fentanyl distribution resulting in death. And we've had 2 cases of child abuse resulting in death involving fentanyl. One was the one I just mentioned. Another was a mother-father combo who was dealing fentanyl, who were users of fentanyl, and their child ingested fentanyl and died. We took both of them to trial and convicted them. They're both serving long sentences. Coinciding with that, they were also dealing fentanyl. And they knew the dangers of fentanyl because when they would give fentanyl to young people, they would give them Narcan, saying this is dangerous stuff. If you overdose, make sure you have your Narcan with you. And so those are the types of cases that we're seeing in fentanyl here in the 4th Judicial District. And again, we are leading the state. We are using the Fentanyl Accountability and Prevention Act powers to a degree that is unmatched throughout the state. The Denver Post did an article a couple of months ago that highlighted that we have more cases that we've actually filed than any other district. I'll note that I don't think the Denver DA's offices have filed a single one of these cases yet. The only other office I think that's done some of these is up in Larimer County in Fort Collins.
Mr. Allen, you may have just alluded to this answer, but that 292% increase, is that parallel to an increase in the usage rate? Is it parallel to the increase of supply in the community? Or does it have to do with the way the judicial office is prosecuting these?
Yeah, it's all of the above, I would say. One, the entire state, you should know, is saturated with fentanyl. When the laws were loosened to the way that they were back in 2019, meaning that 4 grams or less of fentanyl was a misdemeanor, cartels are businesses too, and they realized that there was a very fertile market here, and so they saturated our state with fentanyl. The amounts of fentanyl that we're seizing through law enforcement efforts, interdiction efforts, is just the tip of the iceberg. There's lots more out there. So it's a reflection of how much is in the market. It's a reflection of the collaboration that we've had with our law enforcement partners here in the 4th Judicial District. So with the passage of the Fentanyl Prevention and Accountability Act, I personally met with our law enforcement leaders and made sure that we were equipped to investigate those cases and then prosecute those cases locally, so that we weren't required to go through the federal system anymore as much as we possibly could. So it's really a reflection of all of those things.
Thank you. Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you. So I just want to make sure I heard something you said. By the way, thank you for everything that you're all doing, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But did you say that some of the other districts haven't filed a single case?
That's my understanding.
That's incredible.
It is.
I mean, this is on a massive, deadly scale. That's really disheartening. I just can't believe that.
Yeah. I agree
Well, we
with you,
have the best
Commissioner.
right here in the 4th JD.
Yes. I tell you, one of the things that's been important to me, because I sit on the Colorado State Board of Health, is I have asked them to provide an update on fentanyl throughout the state of Colorado. They gave a presentation that made it sound like the entire state is fighting fentanyl. But your comment is really interesting to me. I'd like to maybe have a conversation with you about that later and like to bring that to the State Board of Health.
I would say that law enforcement largely, so the actual uniformed and undercover law enforcement officers throughout the state are working on this actively. It just not every area of the state has the same partnerships in place, the same collaboration, and the same willingness to go after this thing. So it's really systemic. So I think part of what you're hearing is probably true. It's just not being followed through with actual effort through prosecution.
Thank you.
We continue to increase our efforts on transparency. We now have a Analytics Thursday, which is weekly social media push. It's data-backed statistics that notify the community of current issues, trends, and areas of specific impact. We are still also running our highly accurate data dashboards and looking for areas to expand that effort. As we all know, good, reliable data requires good, reliable inputs, and we rely on more than just folks in my office for those inputs. The court system has to put good data in, and so we're working on ways to firm that up. And the reason why I say that is that we've got 4 public-facing data dashboards currently. We are looking to expand that at some point in the hopefully fairly near future to give us a better picture collectively into what's happening in the criminal justice system in the 4th Judicial District. So now we're at the budget and critical needs. I think it was Mr. Borman earlier who was talking about postage. Maybe it was Mr. Schleicher actually talking about mailing things out. We still rely in the DA's office on snail mail as well. So the postage costs have increased. We have to send out mail to point out, to have good service on people through different things, good notification, that kind of thing. So those costs have gone up because of increases in postage. We're asking for 4 new discovery clerks. As I mentioned before, that's largely because of the demand, the increased demand of body-worn camera footage and all the expanding discovery requirements that we have. 2 restitution clerks to be even better in that area. We do better work in that area than any other DA's office in the state, but there's still gaps, and we want to close those gaps by adding 2 new folks to that team. And then we want to add an HR generalist position. As you all know, we are a growing and dynamic office, and an HR generalist position will allow us to continue to meet the needs of our employees while also maintaining compliance with the requirements placed on us by the state with changes in employment law. It seems like every legislative session there are new changes to the employment law. We work closely with county HR, county attorney's office, and then our folks in the DA's office to make sure that we're in compliance with those laws. So those are the requests that we have as far as going forward. And then the challenges ahead. We want to continue to engage with the community in the pursuit of justice. You've seen what that looks like. Crime is increasing as solve rates decline, so that will be an ongoing challenge, not just for the DA's office, but for law enforcement as a whole. And want to make sure that we have really strong relationships with our partners so that we can collectively attack that issue. That also means that we want to be strong voices in the realm of legislation, which I intend to be very heavily engaged in again this coming legislative session, like I usually am. And then we just had a good discussion about fentanyl and that growing impact. Synthetic opioids, which is what fentanyl is, are always changing. It won't be long before we have the next synthetic opioid in our area. And that will be a challenge for us, both legislatively and collaboratively with our law enforcement partners to tackle that next epidemic of poison really infiltrating our area. And then we will always fight for victims despite that criminal justice reform. We've had lots of reform, decriminalization efforts coming out of Denver over the years, and yet we will continue to stand shoulder to shoulder with our victims to achieve justice for them in the court system. With that, any questions?
Are there any questions for DA Allen? Comments? Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just a comment and then a question. So, great job. I like seeing all this. I mean, I don't like seeing the increased crime trends, but I think what we need to do and why we see that ours is less than statewide is prosecution and the desire to make sure that justice is served. And people should know that's what you and your office does. That's what this county does. And so I appreciate that greatly. The one question I have is in terms of restitution numbers, the dollars, does that relate to like a recovery of theft, stolen items, or fraud, or what goes into that math there?
Yeah, it can be every type of crime. Any case that a victim has a financial loss, it could be anything. It could be from theft. It could be theft of a motor vehicle. It could be murder victims. The family members might have restitution for funeral expenses or all kinds of different things. So it's really runs the entire gamut of our cases.
Commissioner Williams.
Yeah, I especially wanted to thank you having your team here. I think one of the important things, I know I had a friend who, her friend was murdered in a southern town last week, and the response from their law enforcement community wasn't anywhere near as great as the partnerships that we are having with you and all of the law enforcement, with our coroner who is here, all working together to get these victims justice. My friend was really struggling with how her murdered friend would get justice in her community because the police had messed up the crime scene, and there were several things that were going on. And so it's so important for those who are the victims of violence and for the survivors of those victims to have such a strong DA's office. So I just want to thank you for all the work you do.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I'm glad you pointed out that our coroner, Leon Kelly, is here. Dr. Kelly is also a vital partner for us. A lot of people don't necessarily know this, but he was instrumental in Gannon Stouck's case as well. He did a lot of work on trying to identify Gannon's remains because they had decomposed to a level that was difficult for the folks in Florida to handle. And so he stepped into the gap and proved instrumental for us at trial.
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. First, I'll just kind of go through a couple of things that I think are very notable. I appreciate the presentation. I appreciate the work you're doing with regard to fentanyl. To me, it just feels like a drug pandemic, what's going on with that, and the increases just keep on going, so we've got to keep working on it. So thank you for doing all of that. I also want to thank you and the team, and I'll specifically thank the jurors for their amazing work in these high-profile cases, record cases in 4th Judicial District. And those were high-profile, high-risk. There were chances of a different outcome. So I just want to say thank you for doing all that and getting justice for all the victims for those things. They were really, really important. And my thanks to and hats off to the juries that deliberated over those. I have to tell you, I just love the diversion courts. You know, what we're trying to do here, as we've always been trying to do, is get to rehabilitation, and in certain cases, it's logical to go to a diversion court instead of another pathway, because if we can get people rehabilitated and back into a productive member of society, and they may have to be on parole and do some other things, maybe do some hours of work in the community or something like that, but to get them into a place where they can realize that what they did was wrong and get themselves dedicated back into society, those are great things. I also appreciate your restitution work. That's really, really important. And then I thought the charts on lower crime rates, but also really higher numbers of prosecution cases. Let's be hopeful that the word is out on the street. If you're going to do a crime, don't do it here. I hope that's what that means. And I'm disheartened by the massive increases in crime in other parts of the state. And I would concur with you that by and large, a large percentage of that has been the state legislature that I do not think has been very thoughtful regarding the safety of our citizens in Colorado, that there was some kind of, thinking that there was evil intent on behalf of those that are involved in law enforcement. That is just absolutely ridiculous. These people, your people, the people from the sheriff's office, the people from the coroner's office, and all kinds of nonprofits that work in the community to work in this space, they are dedicated individuals, dedicated to providing public safety, and to somehow think that they need to be punished some way I can't even comprehend how anybody could think that. So I just want to thank you and the team for everything you're doing. I appreciate the critical needs. We'll certainly be deliberating all of those. They sound pretty reasonable to me. And I also want to thank the jurors and the whole team, and also the volunteers that you've got, because they help in so many different ways. So thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you, Commissioner. And you hit on a point that I probably should have mentioned, and that is our jurors. When we're collaborating with our community, presenting cases to them, here's some interesting stats. Our community has a particular idea of what public safety wants it to look like in this area, right? And what goes hand in hand with that is their willingness to serve on juries. I think it's somewhere between 65, 68% of all jury summons are responded to here in the 4th Judicial District, which might sound low, but there are communities both in here in the state of Colorado and nationally where the response to jury summons is like 20 to 30%. So our folks in this community are willing to serve on juries. They're willing to come in and hear some really tough evidence, see some really horrible pictures, things that they didn't expect to hear or see when they responded. They're essentially plucked out of their lives and dropped into a courtroom, and then are participants in what's happening. And that can be tough on jurors as well. So thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I want to thank those 68% that did appear for duty. I just want you to know, in the 6.5 years I've been a county commissioner, I've been called to jury duty twice, and only had that happen once in my 28 years in the Air Force. So twice in 6.5 years. Although in both cases, defendant's attorney dismissed me before I got to court, probably because I vote on the district attorney's budget or something. But in any case, I was dismissed both. But the point, I think, that's very important is I showed. And that's a civic duty. So for the 68% that did show, thank you to them.
Yep.
Commissioner Geithner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As always, fantastic presentation and service to our community. It's great that we have all of these items that are related to public safety together this morning, because it's very clear that this board does care a lot about public safety and is prioritizing that in the budget. But the work that you're presenting, honestly, the information is all very sobering. I want to recognize, because I think you did a fantastic presentation, but a lot of this has also been talked about as the leader that you are in the state of Colorado. I've mentioned a couple of times that Common Sense Institute report that recognizes the value of you and your team and how that is making an impact. And that we are a safer community because of that, even though we are continuing to struggle. A couple of things what the one slide that you put up that said engaging the community in the pursuit of justice. I really appreciate this because as you talked about the amount of press conferences and things that you participate in, I've been very impressed with how you've handled that, how you've kept the public completely involved in those things as soon as you were able to. I think that the professionalism with which you have done that has really been important for our community. It would be easy to, say we have so many things to do and do it all behind closed doors, but I think it creates a level of understanding and compassion for the things for the victims, but it also helps people to really understand that you are working for them in their community and creates trust. So that has been incredibly impressive to me, and I really appreciate that you are focused on doing that and continue to do that. I want to thank you too for the work that this board has allowed me to participate in. So thanks to this board for allowing me to participate in that. And thank you for being a part of what we rolled out just a couple weeks ago, that Pikes Peak Promise to continue. And to me, that's exactly what you're already doing. You are engaging the community in the pursuit of justice, and I'm honored to be a part of that and to continue that conversation and help our community truly see the tools that you need that you just don't have. You're doing the very best you can. We still have increases, but you're doing the very best you can with the tools that are being provided in the legal framework we have today. So just really excited to continue to work on that, to continue to talk to our community about that and be a part of what you are doing and be able to, kind of stand behind you and say, you're doing great things. State, help out our DA. He's doing everything that he can. And it's just, it's an honor to serve as a county elected official with you at this time. And in terms of the critical needs, I think, again, it's very clear that this board wants to prioritize public safety, that this is necessary for our community, and I am very supportive of making sure that we are able to do that moving forward.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I would just deflect anything that you're saying about me personally. I would deflect it to the folks that you see here in this room today, but really the 250 total employees at the DA's office. I'm just one piece of that puzzle, and it's because of the dedication that these folks have towards that pursuit of justice. And I also want to commend all 5 of you for what you just said too, that commitment to uphold public safety and support the public safety initiatives. Each one of you have individually and collectively supported us in the DA's office, the sheriff's office, and I'm eternally grateful for that. So thank you.
And just a few comments to wrap it up from me. My colleagues have said it very well. One thing that stood out to me was that chart of the record number of trials that you all have endured this year, and you touched on a couple of the high-profile ones, and the extreme high-profile nature of a few of those. It gave the opportunity to display a consummate professionalism in the face of some really difficult things, of some misunderstanding talking heads and everything else. But the professionalism with which you yourself and your staff treated everyone involved in those cases, and particularly with a focus on the victims, was just really impressive. It made me very proud of our 4th Judicial Office. And I wanted to point out too that we're coming up right on the anniversary in the next few days of the Club Q shooting, and while it took nearly 3 years to get justice for Gannon, it took less than a year to get justice for those victims at Club Q, and that's impressive. It shows the professionalism, again, really of the entire criminal justice system working together. You mentioned the coroner here, as well as our sheriff's office. CSPD was involved in a couple of those, so it's really impressive, the collaboration, especially when you add, what'd you say, up to 23 other agencies that you're working with at any given time. especially when you add other people in the mix, to still have such a solid, locked down ability to ultimately provide justice for those who deserve it. Thank you very much for your work. Thank every one of you who also sees and hears the tough things that jurors do every day as well. And we appreciate that. Please deliver that to the rest of your staff. Again, my colleagues have said it well, as in terms of budget, we are prioritizing public safety, and we'll see 3 different examples of how we can do that this morning. Thank you for presenting a great case.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you
so much. Yep.
I just have to make a quick comment that, as you said, thank you for presenting a great case. I guess we shouldn't be completely surprised that our district attorney was very adept at presenting a great case.
Pun intended. All right. With that, we will take a brief recess and be back for the coroner's presentation next. Good morning and welcome back to the Tuesday, October 24th meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. We are in the midst of our budget hearings, critical needs hearings, and we are now on the coroner's office. Dr. Leon Kelly.
Thank you, County Commissioners, for allowing me to come speak today on our critical needs. And thanks to Nikki, she's not here now, and her team for helping assist put this together. So I am Dr. Leon Kelly, the El Paso County Coroner and Chief Medical Examiner. And so our strategic plan and goals for the next year or a couple of years are, service quality, right? The mission of our office is to figure out how and why people die. And the way that we do that is by essentially presenting an autopsy report and a completed death certificate at the completion of that work. And one of the main metrics then for identifying how we are doing is turnaround time on those reports. And so currently, at least last year, we've entered a period of great challenge, much like other offices, with increased volume, decreased staffing, and more complex cases. And so the 2022 mean, the average number of days of completion was 40.5. The goal over the next year is to get that down to 31 days. Average turnaround time. One of the main metrics we use for accreditation is how many cases take more than 60 days to complete. And the cutoff there is about 10%. And last year we were at 9.4%. So we're right up against that. So the goal would be to get that to less than 5% by the end of 2024. And to put that a little bit in perspective, even 40.5 days puts us probably in the top 5% nationally. Most offices around the country are looking oftentimes between 3 and 6 months to completion. And so while I'm not satisfied with that, certainly we are exceeding what the expectations are and are still in a very good place, but we can certainly do better. Secondly, technology infrastructure. Well, currently we have a 12-year-old Lodox. It's a low-dose X-ray scanner. It's a full-body scanner that we have had. We moved into the building with it in 2012. When we purchased that machine in 2012, it was actually a refurbished machine. I don't have any way to independently vet this, but we were told by the company that it had never been used, even though it was refurbished, because it was essentially a prop on the set of the television show Grey's Anatomy. And so I can't imagine the number of romances and betrayals the machine saw before it made it into our service. But it has done well. However, it is kind of entering the final phase of its life, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. More service quality, ensure retention of employees, and long-term sustainability of what is Colorado's busiest coroner's office through adequate staffing of both top priorities, medical examiners and death investigators, and further development of that mid-level leadership. We are essentially at a staffing state where if all goes well and nothing bad happens, we can survive. But unfortunately, we are literally in the business of bad things happening. And so when they inevitably do, it stresses our staff and our capabilities greatly. And so long story short, or to put another way, I need a deeper bench for the inevitabilities of the challenges that we have in our office. And then lastly, health and safety. It was good to see and kind of the tail end of Michael's presentation. And currently the work that he does is incredible, and it's an honor and a pleasure to work with him. And it's wonderful to play a part in ensuring the public health and safety of this community through partnerships and transparency and accountability. Essentially what we provide at the coroner's office is data and facts that allow him to prosecute, that allow public health to do the work that they need to do to help legislators and policymakers such as yourself make really, really good decisions. And so we have done that, and we will continue to do that, as well as partnerships within the county, but outside the county, such as academia and nonprofits and others. And we're super excited to play a role in the development of the county's data dashboard so that we can also have, our citizens can know exactly what we're doing and how those results are going. All right, so how do you know how the coroner's office is doing? I issue a coroner's annual report every year, and in there it includes caseloads, current staffing, trends, what performance indicators we are seeing, such as turnaround times. And here's the last, however many, 5 years When I took over, 2018 was Dr. Bucks's last year as coroner. I took over in 2019, and well, that was one of my big focuses, was to get that down. And so we got that from 32 days to 21 days average, got less than about 1% of our cases over the 60 days. Unfortunately, because much like every other industry in our post-pandemic era, with short staffing and supply line issues, this requires intensive and very advanced technological equipment, particularly on our toxicology lab, which is really the rate limiting step in turnaround time. As machines go down or struggle, it became difficult to get replacements, to get folks in there to get those machines fixed. And so we saw a creeping up of that, both the average as well as the percent over 60 days. The national standard, once again, is that 10%, so we've never breached that. But that is once again a priority. 2023 year to date, essentially up till maybe 2 months ago, that's about how much our cases are done. We've been able to get that down to about 27 days from the 40 of last year, so we're already seeing great progress there. And we're at about 3.5% of our cases over 60 days. So even though this is kind of our goal over the next year or two, we've already dramatically addressed it, largely by focusing on our tox department and coming up with some, when things go bad and go down, or when folks are out, we now have a plan B, an outside lab that we can use in consultation, which we had to use this year earlier for a few months as our supervisor was out on the best reason to be out for your job. And so we were able to sort of pivot there and keep things moving, which is great. Second, National Association of Medical Examiners laboratory accreditation. So we are every year inspected by an outside third-party agency to ensure competency, quality of the work, safety of the employees. And then every 4 years, we have a full in-person inspection. And so we have been accredited, the El Paso County Coroner's Office, since 1989. Our most recent inspection was just this September, so we just completed that over the summer. What I think is remarkable to folks is that in the entire United States of America, right, every city, county in this country has a coroner or medical examiner. Only 89 of those laboratories are accredited. Only 4 in the entire state of Colorado. By the National Association of Medical Examiners. And all 4 of those in Colorado are, not surprisingly, led, or the 4 offices that are led by medical examiners, okay? There's another accrediting body, the International Association of Coroners and Medical Examiners. In the entire US, they've accredited 36. So when you combine those 2, you're looking at 125. So only 125 coroner or medical examiner's offices in the entire country have accountability, transparency. Someone has come in and said, you are doing a good job. You are meeting the standards of practice in this country. And so it's incredibly unique and an incredible asset to have an office that is accredited. It also helps with recruitment of good quality people. I can tell you, me and my 4 medical examiners would not work at an office if it was not accredited by the National Association of Medical Examiners. And so when I go and testify on Michael's cases, when I go and I present at meetings, when I have to defend the work that we do against defense attorneys or others, I can say, you don't have to trust me, because another party came in of experts, of world-renowned experts came in and said, we are doing what we're supposed to be doing here. All right, budgetary highlights. We bring in revenue, and the revenue sources come from several areas. First, the grant for violent death reporting. We have to upload the data from our fentanyl deaths or drug-related deaths, our suicides. And because we have the ability to do that work, the state gives us grant money for that. We perform autopsies for many out-of-counties, other counties across the state, which I'll show in the next slide. We bring in about $564,000 in 2022. For that work, we also have the state's only in-house forensic toxicology laboratory, so we do some work for other counties as well that's specific to toxicology. And then histology is the creation of the slides, which we have a histologist on our staff who can do that. And then that House Bill 21-1317 is reimbursement for the quantitative analysis of marijuana in folks under the age of 25. So when we do those tests, the state reimburses those because those are mandated, which we were doing before it was mandated, but we do get a little bit of money back for that work. So about $600,000 brought in from other places. The vast majority is on this slide here. Once again, because we are one of the few counties in the state with medical examiners on staff, non-forensic pathologist counties, when they have cases that require autopsy, must either bring those to a county that has medical examiners or hire consultants to come in and perform those autopsies. And so we cover essentially 22, 23 counties throughout Colorado, essentially a third of the state. We'll bring those bodies to us when cases need investigated. If those are criminal cases, our doctors will drive out to those counties to testify on those. And so we have essentially evolved from a traditional, sort of antiquated, archaic traditional coroner's office to essentially a regional medical examiner, covering once again about a third of Colorado. Our biggest contributors historically are Fremont County, Teller County, and Chaffee County, but we cover folks for a very, very far distance. So the breakdown, our budget, 3.7, and plus take the revenue out, it costs our taxpayers about $4.50 per person per year for that coroner's office. So critical need number one is a full-time medical examiner position. This is our trends over essentially a little more than the last decade. You can see in 2012, we did 967 autopsies total. The blue line is El Paso County. The orange line is our out-of-county, so you combine those together. And then over the last decade, we've increased that to 1,464. During that period, we have only increased our staffing by one, which was at the tail end of Dr. Bucks's time in 2018. And so we're going up a new medical examiner about every 250 to 300 cases needed, which I'll get to why that is in a second. For our accreditation, they have essentially pitch counts for medical examiners. How many cases are safe to do that are the recommended amount? And that is essentially 250 autopsies per medical examiner. And that's the average over your office. You take the total number of cases, you divide it by how many doctors you have, how many cases is that per doctor. If you exceed that 250, you essentially are told a strong recommendation to find a course correction of either do less cases or find more doctors. However, it's a recommendation. You still can maintain your accreditation. If you exceed 325 cases, however, you at that point risk losing accreditation. And so what we have is 1,464 total autopsies. Now the math gets a little tricky because 209 of that 1,464 were what we call external exams, meaning we just look at the outside of the body. We don't actually open it. Usually we know what's already on the inside. And so they take about half as much time to do as a full autopsy. And so mathematically, they only count 3 externals for one, as it equals basically one full autopsy. So when you take out the 209, divide by 3, you add it back in, we essentially did 325 complete autopsy equivalents. So that's the number that matters. If you take that and you divide it by our number of doctors, which is 5, it gets us 265 cases per medical examiner. So we've already exceeded the phase 1 violation. Now we're cheating a little bit because the recommendation is actually for your chief medical examiner and your deputy chief, because they have so many other responsibilities, it's really unrealistic to expect them to carry a full medical examiner's load. And so the chief is supposed to work essentially, supposed to count 50% of a full-time medical examiner. And the deputy chief is supposed to be 3/4. So if you do the math correctly, it gives us 4.25 full-time equivalent doctors, which puts us then at 312 cases per medical examiner. So theoretically, like me, I should be doing 150. Well, I've already done 230 this year. I should probably exceed 260, which puts me over the 250 case load already, as someone who's supposed to be doing much less. And so we've exceeded by large margin really the phase 1 violation, and we are now approaching really the phase 2 violation if we're going to be completely transparent and honest about what we're doing. Which is why in our last inspection in September, it was recommended strongly that we increase our medical examiner staffing to ensure appropriate caseloads. So that's where all that math is coming from. Now to our medical legal death investigator. These are the folks that, question?
Commissioner Geithner.
Thank you. I do just have a question on the previous slide, and understanding that this is the requirement of the accreditation. So regardless of the answer to this, I understand the need here. But when you said that the safe number is 250, why is that considered the safe number? Is that about number of hours in a day? Like where does that number come from?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it's partly historical. As they come in and they go through all your case files and they approve, double check everything that you're doing, it's been historically noted that once you exceed that 250, because the caseloads are so high, the likelihood of mistakes and errors starts to go up dramatically. Secondly, as those caseloads go up, that's more trials that you're going to. That's more additional workload that goes on top of it, more families that you're dealing with. And when you look at the average time it takes to do an autopsy, the time it takes to testify, the time it takes to talk to families, it starts to become unrealistic that someone can actually do that in a 40 to 50 to 60 hour work week. And so those two things kind of combined is why they put the pitch counts at those numbers. And then once you exceed that 325, then it's nearly impossible to carry that level of a caseload in a manner that's kind of defined as an appropriate workday.
Thank you for that explanation. As important as I know the accreditation is for all the reasons that you said, to put it into those words of how that really will impact the service to our community is really important. So thank you for that explanation.
Yeah. And the other piece of it is once you start to exceed that 325, that 350, it becomes next to impossible to hire a medical examiner, because the first question a medical examiner asks in a job interview is, how many cases am I going to do? Which is a reasonable question to ask. And so what happens is once you exceed that number, you'll either can't hire, or even more likely people will begin to leave, and it starts kind of a death spiral. You lose, you can't hire, and then you're left with places like Mississippi where one doctor is doing 1,000 cases and nobody will go there.
Dr. Kelly, I was going to hold this question for later, but you just brought it up. Can you tell us, back to that critical needs request number 1, you've told us before how difficult it is to get qualified medical examiners and how few of them graduate in any given year. Can you tell us how long it will take to potentially fill this and what the cycle of timing and school looks like?
Yes. So one of the challenges is that I've talked about this before, but we maybe have between 500 and 750 full-time medical examiners in the U.S. at any given time. We probably need 1,000 to 1,200, and so your pool is very low. We only graduate about 25 to 35 forensic pathologists a year in the entire country. And so all of these offices are essentially fighting over that very, very small pool. In the state of Colorado, only Denver has a training program. And so we only graduate 1 in the entire state. Graduation of medical school is in June, then you do your fellowship. So it's essentially July 1 to June. And so you're fighting over these 25 to 30 people essentially at the midpoint of the summer. And so you start doing interviews generally around November, December for the following June, July, and then hopefully have people hired and ready to go by that point. I can tell you, having done this now for 15 years, that I compare it a lot to like Division I basketball recruiting. Like you got to meet them in middle school, and then you kind of keep catching up with them. How are you doing? How are you doing? So one of my staff, Dr. Murdoch, now I met him literally as a med student, now probably 8 years ago, and kept in touch. Then he went to Penrose for residency, and I kept in touch and mentored him, and then to fellowship. And so you got to start looking really, really, really early. And so there's never a guarantee. I know Denver had openings for several years before they were able to hire. Arapahoe County had openings for several years. Most offices in the country have openings that are almost perpetually open. We've been very fortunate here. 2 years ago, as you all remember, I was down 3 medical examiners and was able to, because of relationships and things, recruit, which is essentially a miracle, 3 at the same time. So we had 3 start what would now be almost 3 years ago. They're coming up. So you can't make it work, but it is a challenge for sure.
Thank you.
All right, so budget and critical needs. Need 2 full-time medical legal death investigators. And once again, these are the folks that literally go to the scene, talk to the families, investigate the death on site, and then bring those bodies back to the office and issue a report, essentially the eyes and ears of the medical examiner. And so over the last decade, we have gone from 3,600 total deaths investigated to 6,741 investigated. So nearly a doubling over the last 10 years. Both the autopsies and the death investigation increases are driven, at least the last 3 to 4 years, by fentanyl, increases in car crashes, and unfortunately increases in homicides. Those are the big contributors. And so during that entire time, in 2016 was the last time we asked for additional staffing. We went from 8 to 10. Since then, I've been able to, since I took over in 2018 or 2019, kind of move staffing around. We were able to phase out transcriptionists because now there's technology that can do those jobs. But this is also a difficult job to retain and to recruit. We have once again, a national shortage of folks who can do this work. We are currently down 2 death investigators. So we're at 8 of our 10. And these jobs are incredibly emotionally difficult. They're physically demanding as well, because you may be carrying 300-400-pound bodies out of second stories of buildings or homes or out of basements. And it's a job that a lot of young people think they want to do because they see it on TV and they listen to the podcast and it sounds awesome. And then they show up and they suddenly realize it's an incredibly difficult job. And so we don't often have trouble finding people to hire. We often have trouble getting those people to complete their 6-month kind of trial internship. That's really the issue there, either because of the emotional drain and strain of it or the physical demands of being able to actually move these bodies around. And so there's really no office that compares to us because of size and complexity of what we're doing. The closest is Denver. Dr. Caruso is the chief there, and he does a wonderful job, and that's a great office. But they're really not even in the same ballpark as far as caseloads. We're on the left there. We investigated 6,741 total. Last year, they did 5,000, a little over 5,000. From autopsies, we did 1,464, and they did 970. From a staffing perspective, we're essentially identical on medical examiners. We're a little bit low on death investigators, a little bit low on morgue staff, lower on administrative staff. They have 2 data folks. They have a full-time epidemiologist. I'm essentially our data person. Me and one of my investigators work on it together. We do have 4 toxicologists because once again, we're the only folks that do that in their own building. All right, so critical need number 3, the Lodox X-ray scanner. Every case that is essentially trauma, so car crashes, homicides, suicides, are going to get X-rayed. All kids get X-rayed. Fires, decomposed bodies are going to get X-rayed head to toe. That's our scanner there on the right, and the left is what they look like when the scans come out. And so this is a busy, busy machine. We have had it limping along here for the last couple of years. The company it's a South African company. It was developed initially to scan the people working in the diamond mines as they were coming out, because it's low dose X-ray. You can get them every day and it doesn't harm you, and it's not harmful to the workers because the X-ray dose is so low. And then they obviously realized that this could be useful in a medical and forensic setting. And so you lay the body on there and it scans it from head to toe, and then we turn, that's anterior to posterior or front to back. We turn the machine 90 degrees and then it scans from side to side. So it allows us to localize bullets in bodies and go find them. It helps protect our staff from sharp objects. It allows us to identify medical, surgical hardware that's in the body that has serial numbers on it that then we can use to identify them. And then obviously broken bones in the normal sort of medical use. The week of Club Q, it worked. The following Monday, so 1 week later, we had, I think, a couple car crashes and a couple gunshot wound suicides that need scanned, and it broke. And so the company the North American branch is in California. So every time it breaks, we have to fly them in. It's part of a service contract, but it takes them several days to get there to fix it. So it can be down 3 to 4 days before it's up and running. So that day, we had to drive the bodies up to Arapahoe and use their scanner, which is doable. However, had that happened the week before of Club Q, it would have been disastrous. In the most recent Return to Nature funeral home disaster, I would love to have scanned every one of those bodies coming through the door. It can't do that much in a row. It overheats and shuts down. And so what I did was decided to scan only those who came out the other side after processing that we still didn't have names on. And so I could reduce that down from 189 to 50 or 60. So not ideal, but I made it work. We're just fortunate that it hasn't gone down at the worst moment. And so it is working right now. We can continue to support it, but knowing that at some point it's going to break when we can least afford it. And so it's something I'm trying to address as quickly as possible. It's medical equipment, and so it's expensive, and it is state of the art. This is the company that we have used the last 12 years as Lodox. There's another company, its reputation isn't quite as good. We've been incredibly satisfied with not only the machine, but the service that we do get from the company. And it is essentially a plug and play. So there's no structural changes that need to happen with the building, which is why I've decided to go with that one. So how this affects us budget-wise, 3.7 is our current 2024 budget. I'm asking for a critical needs of 671. 2 of those are ongoing, right? The medical examiner and the death investigator. And then the other one, the bigger one, is the Lodox full body X-ray scanner. So that's what I have.
Are there any questions or comments? Commissioner?
Yes, I want to thank you for all that you do. We've seen, as Commissioner Geithner said this morning, we have a community that's very much passionate about public safety. So from our sheriff, our police departments, to our district attorney, to our coroner, it all makes one good triangle to have all 3 working closely together. And I did mention earlier a friend who had died in actually Los Animas County, one of the counties that you're not contracted with. So you might be getting a call from there, but you just see that in the results of our outcomes in fighting for justice for these victims, the professionalism of your office coming through, being able to have you in court to testify, or one of your other coroners there to testify, really helps in these cases. And so I appreciate all you do, and thank you very much for helping out Fremont County on the Return to Nature funeral home. That was a very sad situation.
It is very sad. Thank you for those comments. It was very sad and exceptionally challenging last couple of weeks for us.
Commissioner Vanderwerf?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll express my appreciation as well, and I also acknowledge and appreciate the last few weeks that I have to imagine have been pretty tough. It does seem to me like perhaps legislation might be coming down from the state to work on that issue. You're probably involved in that one degree or another, so thank you for that as well. And I think you do a great amount of work. You and the team, the entire team, do a great amount of work with the resources you have. I appreciate that a lot, because that allows us, when we're dealing with budget challenges, to be able to say, hey, we're at the edge here. We just can't just stand by now. We've got to do something about this. I did have one question that I wanted to ask. It's perhaps not a critical question per se, but in that accreditation process, if, the coroner is actually authorized so many medical examiner seats, but then has trouble recruiting them, are you able to count the seats, or do you have to count the actual people when you get to the cases per person?
Yeah, essentially what they do is, as long as you are making an effort to resolve the issue, they understand the challenge that we have. So as long as there's a plan in place and there's effort moving in that direction, you will continue. You may have an approval, like a contingency, because as long as you have that plan there, then usually they'll continue your accreditation with the knowledge that, hey, we're letting them go, and here's why: is because they're addressing it. They're attempting to address it.
Yeah, I appreciate that the accreditation agency would be willing to have that kind of flexibility, because if you've got the positions and you've got the funds and you can't find anybody to fill it, then you're stuck. And then you could be punished for that, in some other way by losing the accreditation when you just couldn't even find a qualified person for the job. So I'm glad they've got some flexibility.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I appreciate the information. Really like the explanation on the ratio and how many workload per medical examiner. That was very useful, and you really detailed that in a way that was easy to understand and why that's important. And so I appreciate that. And again, also how this board is being very supportive, as we always are, of public safety, and this is just one aspect of that as well. Thank you.
Commissioner Geithner.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and great comments by everyone so far. Really great presentation, really appreciate that. I think oftentimes when we talk about public safety, probably not everyone thinks about the coroner's office, but it is very clear that what you do is incredibly important, especially in those partnerships with our DA's office and getting justice for victims. And so I think that's incredibly important. I think that your explanation of why this is so necessary, not just for we need the accreditation, but for, again, quality services to our community, which I know is important to all of us, was a great explanation. And I absolutely think this is an integral part of us continuing to support public safety. So thank you for bringing these forward, and seems like a really wise investment for our community.
And, first of all, I'm somewhat shocked that we can get any type of imaging equipment, much less a full body x-ray scanner, for less than $500,000. So I think, but it just goes to show how much your office does with so very little. And I'm incredibly impressed. I think you've made the case, not just today and not just in this presentation, but over what we've seen you do for our community. And I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. I didn't get a chance to say it this year for your annual coroner's report, but this community is so fortunate to have someone like you leading the office, looking forward to what we're going to need in the future, how we can serve our rural county neighbors, how we can build a pipeline within an office, and how we can continue to have that standard of excellence in medical examination and forensic science really at the top in the nation. So I'm very grateful that you do that and find time to analyze the data and tell us what it means in other areas of public safety for our community. It's incredibly impressive what you have accomplished, and I am excited to see this request. I think it fits right in line with, as my colleagues have said, and with what you've heard in the previous two presentations, the prioritization of public safety. And then on to another note, thank you for the time that you and your staff, time and energy and emotional energy that you all spent with the recent caseload that you didn't expect to see in your office. And I have no doubt that the professionalism with which you were working with everybody from CBI to FBI, as well as many other regulatory type agencies, was second to none. I appreciate that. We're thankful and grateful for you, and I hope that your staff can perhaps see some relief in caseload at some point, but either way, just grateful that you're able to take care of them in the way that you do, because they have some of the hardest jobs in this community.
Yes, thank you. And the Return to Nature Funeral Home, we did 189 autopsies in 7 days, which is essentially like 12.5% of our annual caseload. So we work 12-hour shifts, literally 7 straight days. I'm going to brag a little bit here, but I do not know, and this isn't a knock on anybody else's office, because there are great offices, but I think it speaks to the magnitude of the challenge, but I do not know that anybody else could have done that. because of the uniqueness of the staffing that we have, the facilities that we have, we had the opportunity to do something that was really impactful. But that can't happen. We could not have done it without the support of our Pikes Peak Office of Emergency Management, our facilities, the support of you all, not only here, but historically. And so I'm very proud of the effort that we did, but the ability to do that was a decade or more in the making from support of this board. So thank you all for that.
Great. County Attorney's Office.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, Commissioners. Thanks for taking a few minutes to consider my critical needs request today. A couple of tough acts to follow. My presentation is significantly shorter, just as a preface to it. As you're all aware, there are two divisions within my office. We have the Civil Division, which we'll be talking about today. I also have the Human Services Division, which is housed across the street at the Metro Building. We are at the full correct number of staff positions there. I don't have any critical needs associated with Human Services, so we're not going to spend much time on them. As far as today's discussion, I do need to provide a little bit of context with regard to litigation, employment, and code enforcement to explain my ultimate critical need for a full-time attorney that would be dedicated primarily to transactional work. So think land, water, real estate, operational day-to-day advice for the countywide elected officials as well as executive directors. Okay, strategic plan objective supported by this critical needs request is service quality, ensures continued timely and high quality legal support and development and related matters. I believe that we are currently providing timely support. However, the additional position I think will improve that as well as maintain the quality of support that we have ongoing. So operating indicators, litigation and employment. Civil litigation numbers have been extremely high for the last several years. You can see them listed there with a particularly large spike in the number of filings in 2022. I believe that that's a record for my office. And so far this year, as of the beginning of the month, we had 35 civil litigation filings this year. What these numbers don't necessarily capture, though, is the intensity of a given case. Several of them, particularly those filed late last year and through this year so far, are represented high amounts of discovery, high amounts of pretrial motion types of cases. So with that said, employment as well. Employment hearings, this would include termination appeals, unemployment hearings, EEOC, CCRD charges. 21, we had 23 of those. 2022, we had 15, then back up year to date so far this year at 24. Similar to civil litigation, we don't see any indication of the numbers of these necessarily slowing down. In all likelihood, they will increase. And then finally, code enforcement. This is an initiative that's been ongoing in my office since I was appointed about a year and a half ago. It is increasing our turn of code enforcement matters. It's quality of life issue. So you'll see the code litigation active numbers. First, for abatements, abatements are where we seek a court order and the county hires a contractor to go in and conduct a cleanup, and the property owners build on the back end. There aren't as many of those necessarily as code litigation. Code litigation would seek a court order for the property owner to clean up their own messes and issues. So if you see the difference between 2022 and 2023, a significant increase in the amount of code litigation. We are engaging in a significant amount of alternative dispute resolution in these matters as well. But again, being a quality of life issue, we anticipate this continuing at a pretty heavy pace. So with transactional matters, county's land use, water, real estate, assessment, other infrastructure related transactional matters have also remained steady. County Attorney's Office continues to review files signed within EDARP. Those file types are listed here, but they are the types of files that typically wind up in front of the board. So you get legal eyes on those very early in the process. As far as the number of water reviews completed, we had 39 in 2021, 29 in 2022, and then year to date so far this year we had 26. Similar to other areas, we anticipate the transactional matters as a whole, particularly development related, continuing at least steady, if not in an uptick. So a little bit of history from the office. In 2020, Cole Emmons was a longtime attorney dedicated to land and water matters primarily. He retired, and there are two dedicated positions, or there were two dedicated positions for transactional matters. Cole's duties are listed under position number 2. At the time he retired, because of that large influx of litigation matters, his position was retooled for litigation at that time. I do believe that needed to happen. However, we're at a point currently where position 1, Lori Seago, has absorbed many of these duties, as well as Steve Klafke and myself taking on a number of them as overflow is needed. The critical need position that I'm seeking would actually replace that position number 2 and have, again, a dedicated transactional attorney. With the caveat that all attorneys in my office are required to be able to go to court, to be able to litigate matters as necessary, because as you all have seen, some of our transactional matters do lead to litigation, and it's easier to have a single attorney point of contact for those matters. So critical needs justification, seeking one transactional attorney to support ongoing and increasing county needs. The demand for litigation and code enforcement is anticipated to continue, if not increase. And the continuing need for land, water, real estate, support of countywide elected officials, and general transactional support requires an additional attorney. Final slide. Our budget folks provided this for me. This is my base budget. You'll see the general fund amount. This would support the civil division of my office, and then the restricted funding is primarily for that human services division. That would be state funding, and the increased budget for an additional FTE. Can I answer any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Hodges? Commissioner Williams.
I did have one. So on the employment law page, you had the EEOC complaints, and then you had one I didn't recognize. What is a CCRD charge?
Yes, ma'am. That would be the Colorado Civil Rights Division. I should have clarified that. Thanks for bringing it up.
That's okay. You know, I could always ask you to go ahead and give all of the abbreviations for the land use database. But
I have them.
oh, there you go. All right, but I think we're okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, just again, express my appreciation. I think you're a council in service to the county, broadly to all the employees, but also I can say for me personally, I feel it's been timely and of high quality. So thank you for that great work. It's clear that the caseload is increasing, but even if the caseload isn't necessarily increasing by large numbers, I think the complexity of the cases are substantively increasing as we get into kind of more complicated kind of challenges. Also, you know, this board, certainly myself, is interested in, you know, every once in a while fighting back on things that come down to us from the state. So that increases the complexity there as well. So I appreciate your request for a transactional attorney. That seems reasonable to me. And maybe, you know, if that particular individual were to handle more of the transactional kind of work, maybe that helps to free up your other attorneys for actual court hearings and so forth. I think that's part of the plan here, if I understand correctly.
Thank you, sir. We do have some attorneys covering various overflow matters that I think that we'll be able to stay within our lanes. And again, the litigation influx has really driven a lot of the decision making since 2020 as well.
Great. Thank you very much.
Any other comments, questions? Commissioner Geithner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Really appreciate the huge amount of work that I know goes on. In addition to kind of the things that have been talked about, I know that there's a lot going on in terms of looking at, planning information, and as well as, the engineering criteria. There's a lot of different, code changes and things that are being discussed, which I think is a great thing. I think we're at a place in the county when it's important to have those discussions about what we're doing and if it's all working. I know I've asked a whole lot of questions about water, and there's been a lot of time spent, helping to dig into some of those issues. So I can absolutely see where, a lot of this is just the changing environment that we are in as the county, and the hard questions that we are having to look at, the things we're having to reevaluate, navigating the challenges of changing state laws. And so I really do appreciate that. To Commissioner Vanderwerf's point, we've got some number changes, but also it is really a matter of the substance of all of those cases. So I, for one, know that there's that's challenging to keep up with all of those requests, especially when we're looking at reviewing those things, looking at trying to find new solutions, which is a great thing to be doing. But it is challenging, and I appreciate you bringing this forward, and think that there's a lot of value to be found here for us internally as accounting, which ultimately I think translates to value for our citizens.
Thank you, ma'am.
And I'll just wrap up if there are no other comments. As one of this board's two appointees, we have the opportunity to give you lots of feedback, and I believe in publicly praising. This is an opportunity to do that. Your office has dealt with so much this year, and the way that you've been able to, as you say, keep everybody in their lanes. I say keep us all out of trouble, and make sure that that everyone is doing as we should ultimately for the citizens. And you do all of that without a whole lot of public praise, much less people understanding what the county attorney's office exists for. It's not just for our internal things or defending the county's lawsuits. As you said, your Human Services Division takes on all of those child welfare cases, and many other things. And then you're also helping us on the employment law side. There are so many things that are unseen that your office does really to ultimately serve El Paso County citizens much better. And I'm grateful that you are at the helm of that as well. And I think we've been able to take kind of a strategic and tactical approach with you there. This position is one of those that will get us where we need to be with that. So with that, thank you.
Thank you. Y'all have blessed me with the best law firm I could imagine leading. So I really appreciate you.
Although I hear the DA's office is the largest law firm in Southern Colorado. So.
That's correct. They have been for quite some time.
Well, thank you for your cooperation with them from time to time as well. Okay, next on our agenda is the Citizens Outreach Group. Mr. Godfrey, thanks for your patience.
Oh, good. Make sure I get the right button here. The green button. Okay. Good morning, Madam Chair and members. Jim Godfrey, Chair of the Citizens Outreach Group. I'm here today to I'll try to sum this up as quickly as I can in my 25 slides, but no. I just here to kind of go over what the Citizens Outreach Group has done, and particularly from the legislative things that we need to do to take care of. So with that. All right. The requirement is that we at least monthly, annually, that we review certain processes in the strategic plan, the public safety tax, and look at the progress of the financial roadmap. And so we have completed that. We have done all of those things. I think that even though we're down to 4 active members at the moment, I think that those briefings and discussions with each of those people that presented those was thorough. I think there were some great questions asked by the members, and then we truly have people that are interested in carrying out this role as a Citizens Outreach Group member. The strategic plan was presented to us, and I must say that being retired military and have done many strategic plans, I was really impressed a couple of years ago when they changed the format of the strategic plan down to the level of detail that they're going with, the way to measure their progress against those goals in the strategic plan, I think is outstanding. And to be able to know that when participate and meet with workers at different levels, they're aware of what they're doing and what goal of the strategic plan they're accomplishing. And I think that speaks highly of the staff and everybody from the top down, that they're aware. So many strategic plans are done and put on the shelf and nobody cares about them and watches them. But when you get it at the lower level and those people are talking to and know that what they're doing and what goal they're trying to accomplish, speaks highly of the entire staff in that. So a great strategic plan. It was presented to us. The public safety tax report from the Sheriff Roy Ball. I thought it was a very, very solid report. He was upfront. He talked about that some of the things in that report were from the previous sheriff, and he talked about how he was going to change certain aspects of that as he went through that. And I thought that the detail that he provided was really good. And again, he pointed out the things that he was going to change for the next year. And so some good questions asked by the members during that briefing as well. One other thing that in the first year that I was on the COG, I began to wonder, it was called a Citizens Outreach Group, but yet we weren't doing any outreach. We were coming in, getting a briefing on something and leaving and doing nothing. And the only citizens outreach was if we chose to go to the fair. And so I kind of raised the question once I got appointed chair of, if we're a citizens outreach group, why aren't we doing more outreach? And what can we do to help you guys as commissioners, as representatives from your districts in the citizens outreach group? How can we help the citizens of the county better understand what the county is doing and help you in your own districts relay that and be of assistance to you in doing that? And so we kind of started this discussion at the end of last year, and it's kind of gone on. And so as you are aware, we've rewritten the bylaws. We're relooking at the appointment of the members of the COG, and to do that. And even though we're down to 4 members, I think the 4 people that are currently on the COG are very dedicated. They're involved, they're engaged, and they want to do more to help you let our citizens know what's going on in the county. And so we're enabling ourselves to help you if you want our help, and we would like to do that. We've got a Citizens College coming up. We've only got, as many of you are aware, it takes a lot of coordination and a lot of effort to put that on. It's very successful. We got some very good comments and reviews from the participants that took part in it. And we just did not have the time or staff to do that this fall. So we're now targeting the springtime. So we're working on that right now to begin to do that. And we'll need the help from the staff to let the members of the various participants and presenters in that know that we'll be contacting them to start arranging that. And so that's coming up in the spring. We're also looking forward to the appointment of the new members of the COG and get everybody oriented. We've got a training procedure now that you can go through as a new member of the COG. Several of us have been on that. We just kind of came in and welcome to the COG, and here you are. Well, we've got a little step-through training program that Ryan and his staff and Vernon have put together. And it's very good and very thorough, and so we're looking forward to being part of that larger group. And on October 6th, slide right here. October 16th, we did receive the preliminary balanced budget from Nikki, and a great job, and it was a lot of information there to digest. As a career financial manager and budget guy, I know what kind of work goes into putting together such a dynamic document like that with such a complex organization as the county. And a great job, great report, and good detail. So with that, I'll cut my 25 slides short. Any questions?
Do we have any questions? Commissioner Vandenberg.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Jim, I just want to say thanks for the work you're doing. You maybe remember we had a conversation maybe more than 3 years ago. We both used to work at Robbins, the Robbins area. And you, as I think maybe you started active duty at Warner Robbins, but you certainly were a civilian contractor there, and I was active duty, so we've got some common background.
Yeah, I was the DMAPS implementation program manager for a while there. So
Great.
Defense Maintenance and Acquisition Program.
And I was the C-130 program director, and then on my second tour there, I was the electronic warfare program director. So, but back to the outreach group. So do you have any insights or any thoughts yet, or are you still kind of assessing about the preliminary balanced budget that you received, or is that still a conversation that's ongoing at this point?
No, I don't recall that there were any concerns or comments that I heard. I was, unfortunately, I had to dial in. I was at Albuquerque for the Balloon Festival. My wife and I volunteer down there for that festival, and so I had to call in. We had some Teams issues, but I don't recall that there were any discussions. Nikki, were there anything that I didn't hear? Bail me out, or
And I have one more question after that, this question.
Commissioners, I don't want to speak for the Citizens Outreach Group, but I was actually going to come up here after Mr. Godfrey was done and just say how impressed that I was with how many questions there were, but and the great engagement that we got from our citizens on that group. We were able to answer all the questions. There were no concerns from the committee, from any individual member or as a whole about the budget. I feel like the feedback was very supportive about the direction of this budget and complementary to the progress we're making towards the strategic plan and the county's goals.
Great, thank you. And then one other question for you, Jim, is with regard to Citizens College. I know it's sometimes been a challenge to get that up and going. The last one that we had seemed like it was a pretty good process, and I believe that there was a component of it where we allowed people to just sign up for an individual module. So if they cared about maybe just learning more about the county and law enforcement, or if they cared more about learning about the county and Department of Human Services or something, they could go to just that one particular event instead of going through the whole school. So I don't know if you had feedback on that, if that seemed to make sense, or you're planning on carrying a similar approach going forward for future Citizens College events.
Good point, and thanks for the question, because we have discussed that. There were mixed feelings about that, and one of the problems we had was we tried, because we had so many people that originally signed up, we tried to control the number of people per session, and so we put a limit on the number of participants. I think it was 35 or something like that. So there's a lot of people that didn't get to attend. And of those 35, sometimes only 10 would show up. It was very frustrating because there was another 10 that couldn't get on the list that could have come and probably would have come. So that was a learning curve we're trying to work on for this one. And the ability just to sign up for one, we're mixed. We're putting together a subcommittee to work on this, and we're mixed about that. There are several of us, including myself, that think you ought to sign up for the whole thing. It's not just come because you got a complaint with real estate and you want to talk about this, or with parks and you want to complain about that. We think that to better understand how the county works, you need to know how the county works, and that includes everybody. And so we're going to debate that. We're talking about that. I think we're all leaning towards, we want to encourage you to come to all sessions. Last year, we only gave a shirt to the people that completed all sessions. So if you come for one, not that getting some information isn't a bad thing, that's not the point. There's a lot of effort that goes into this on the part of the staff, overtime, evenings, weekends. And we just feel like that if you're going to participate in Citizens College, learn the whole thing. So we haven't made a firm decision on that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Geithner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So thank you so much for your work on this. I was online at the CAG meeting as well when this was presented, and I too was impressed with the level of questions, and there was a lot of great dialogue as the budget was presented. So really appreciate the attentiveness there and how engaged the entire COG was. I look forward to seeing, now that we have some new things in place on the COG, bringing in those new members. And I know that it's something that has been an effort, but I think a little bit in another one of the themes that we're seeing from this is there's a lot of change happening at the county. And that I think is partially due to just we are changing and growing outside of these buildings. And so we have to change and adapt and be willing to serve all the residents of El Paso County to the best of our abilities. This is another situation where we're changing and morphing a little bit here, and I look for some clarity on the other side of all the work that the COG has done to move this particular board forward. So thank you for your service.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So thanks, Jim, for all this. I've gotten to work with you quite a bit on the PPRTA and all the feedback on and plus the COG, and appreciate all the work that goes into that. And hopefully we get you up to the right numbers with the COG here in the next couple weeks or months, and then also continue to look forward to your recommendations moving forward. And you always got great insight. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
And I'll just wrap up the comments. Thank you very much for your service and your leadership during a changing time, and for just leading that in a way that aligns with the vision that we want to make sure that all of our volunteers on all of our boards and commissions feel utilized and are able to be effective in the roles, and this one particularly in the community. So thank you for bringing that question as you rose to the chairmanship there. Thank all of your fellow COG members for the time and diligence they have taken with all of your charges, the public safety sales tax budget, as well as this one, and anything else you all have really taken on fully, including Citizens College. We appreciate that work and recognize that you're all doing it as volunteers and also as very engaged people otherwise in your careers and in your professions. And you're giving of that time to our citizens and to make El Paso County better. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. And I would be remiss if I didn't say without Ryan and Vernon's staff, and Rebecca Rudder, we really appreciate the work that they do to support. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Simmons.
Commissioners, that was the last portion of our critical needs hearings. And so this is the last opportunity that we had to hear from departments and offices. Our next budget hearing is on Tuesday, November 14th. That's the date that we will go through the commissioner suggested changes to the original adopted budget for 2024. That opportunity is where we will look for direction from commissioners. There won't be any actual votes that day. It's where kind of we look for head nods, making sure that we have 3 commissioners that are in support of any changes from the preliminary balanced budget to the original adopted budget. We, at that hearing, also invite public comment, so absolutely an opportunity for the public to come and comment on the budget. We're still welcoming public input all the way through that meeting. And so if citizens would like any questions answered or have comment on the budget, they should reach out to the budget office or your county commissioners. And also on that date, we'll obviously know preliminary results from the election and whether or not a ballot initiative will affect our mandates for 2024. And so we'll have additional information for you at that point and know the rest of our budget schedule.
Thank you. Any further questions? Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you very much, Ms. Simmons, for all the great work and hard work by you and your staff on this. As I mentioned, every year to the citizens on, he's mentioned November 14th is that next one. Really the best opportunity for residents to have one, not even the last, it will actually be the last day, I think, because we just really vote on the following meeting after that. But citizens should understand that that's where we have the spreadsheet, and we'll go line by line if there's any last minute changes. In the past, I know this budget's a lot tighter than some previous ones, but we have literally changed tens of thousands of dollars from here to there. And I think in my first or second year, we changed like $1 million of changes that can happen. And if we have residents there, let us know what you want, come out, dial in, make recommended changes, because we will be making likely a few changes, smaller ones likely this year, but there's always a chance for your input to make a difference in the annual budget. So I'm asking the citizens or talking to the citizens out there, your voice matters. Thank you.
Commissioner Geithner.
Thank you. So I really appreciate you reminding folks again about, what's coming up with the election and that we'll get to revisit that. I do have just a couple of comments. So I was reading some news this morning and something that I read was really disturbing to me, and that was that in recent local, statewide events, there was an individual who called local governments very greedy. And I was really struck by that. And so today, as we were looking at these presentations, I could not help but look back at a think tank report, Common Sense Institute, who took a look at El Paso County's budget. And over the last 5 years, adjusted for population and inflation, El Paso County's tax per citizen for the services that we provide has been $26. That's 4%. And I think that's really important that we recognize that this is a very fiscally conservative community, and we try to reflect that. It did not strike me as a greedy thing that we are trying to keep things at about the same rate. So I just really wanted to emphasize that here as we're talking about this budget and how we're moving forward. And to give a little comparison, though it is certainly the voters' right to choose to move forward and increase it as they have done in Colorado Springs, there wasn't quite an apples to apples comparison on percentage in the report. But in Colorado Springs, over the same period of 5 years, the increase per citizen was $600. So even in El Paso County, we were really showing that we are working within the budget that citizens have told us that they're willing to allow for their county government. And so I think that's really important. In over 10 years, we didn't have that for El Paso County. That amount increased 59% for Colorado Springs. So I do think that when we're looking at what we're doing here with the budget, it's very obvious as we listen to people talking about absorbing costs, looking for savings, that is happening here, that we are willing to work within that budget. And huge kudos to you and your team for continuing to look for those things. It's not always easy, but I think it is the right thing to do. And I'm really proud of the work that you and your team and that the entire county is doing in order to keep costs very low here in El Paso County for our citizens.
Thank you. Any other comments? Commissioner Vanderweer.
I'll just say ditto to that.
Thank you very much to you and your team. With that, we have completed item number 10A. Item number 11.
Item number 11 is the addendum, and there are no addendum items today.
Item number 12.
Item number 12 is the executive session. 12A, executive session pursuant to CRS 246402-4F regarding personnel matters pertaining to the annual performance review for the county administrator. And 12B, executive session pursuant to CRS 246402-4F regarding personnel matters pertaining to the annual performance review for the county attorney. Nathan Whitney, First Assistant County Attorney. Xavier Frost, Executive Director, Chief HR Officer, Human Resources Department.
Can I hear a motion?
I move we go into executive session for the purposes stated on the record.
Second.
That has been moved and seconded. Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Aye.
Commissioner Geithner.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. That passes 5-0. We will go into executive session following a short break.